Hey everyone, welcome back to our DC Films podcast. This is episode 26. I know it's been a few weeks since we've had an episode up, so there's a lot of stuff that's come out in the last number of weeks, and there's a lot that we want to talk about today. So joining me today are obviously some familiar faces. So if each of you guys want to go around and introduce yourselves to the listeners.
Hello everyone, my name is Artyom and I'm Great on Wow on Tumblr.
Hello, I'm Katie and I'm Story Advocate on Tumblr.
I'm Danielle and I'm a Social Justice League on Tumblr.
I'm Rebecca and I'm Endeavor Network on Tumblr.
Okay. Thank you guys for joining me. Okay, so I want to start out by saying this. Artyom, I kind of hate you right now. So Artyom...
Don't hate people, be happy for them.
yes, of course. Okay, this isn't like a legit I hate you. But Artyom here, on 3 different occasions in the last few days, had that Zack Snyder respond to him on Vero.
That was awesome.
I think he was just in a very good mood.
Whatever, dude. He likes you, and he hates
you definitely hit a nerve, though, with the talking about the gym and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And I think you're kind of in a good mood, and also said something that really spoke to him about what the gym is to you, and that just got him rolling. And that was really, really cool. I was like, wow, I could have that if I'd actually get off my butt and work out and, talk about it. I could totally have that too, but I'm happy for you, man.
We all need to get buff, and then we can, go and, hang out with Zack Snyder.
There you go.
There was an interesting detail about his favorite gym. He posted a photo where he drew a picture at one of his working out places. And in other photo, he was performing a deadlift on exactly this platform he drew a picture at. I think it was an octopus he drew in one of his pictures. Or you didn't follow those moments when he posted that.
Well, also Zach, and we were just talking about this in the group chat. He's just been so active lately, and talking about Batman v Superman. It's just, and I know we spent a lot of time talking about this in our last episode, but just, so I feel like something's changed in Zach, because before he was just so quiet about everything, and he had a right to be, and we were fine with that. But now he's getting so involved in just over the weekend, so this past weekend was Easter weekend, and all these sites were running the whole religious comparisons to in Batman v Superman, and since then Zach has been oh well, since no one's getting it, I have to spell it out from all these instances now. Even this morning, he posted about the picture that's hanging above Bruce's bed, symbolizing his addiction to drugs and sex being his way of avoiding his pain. And it's just whoa, where's the...
that was so awesome. We all got that he's hiding, his pain with drugs and alcohol and sex and stuff. We all know that. It's right there, but I never even looked at the thing above his bed. I was like, oh, that was cool.
I think Zack is just I don't know. It's he's sighing loudly or something over the internet. He's just okay, I'll just whatever put this here for you guys, because some people just don't get it.
Yeah, even yesterday morning, I don't remember what post it was on, but somewhere along the way, somebody on Vero posted, I think, the article about the religious imagery, because everybody's like, oh my gosh, this is news, and they get all crazy. Yeah. We've seen that forever. Okay. But,
years.
He got on there and he said, honestly, this is base level stuff. People who say that this is reaching don't even really understand the basics of, I'm paraphrasing badly, of imagery, because this is pretty basic level stuff. They don't even really, get that there's a way bigger level to it. And it was oh, dude, you are so right.
I'm especially confused
because really, you don't see it? Okay, I'll point it out then. But I agree. Yeah. I think I hear a big sigh coming out of this man.
I'm especially confused because people complain about, what's with all the Superman is Jesus thing, and they complain about it. But I'm why are you surprised then? There's religious imagery in this movie. Haven't you been complaining that Superman is Jesus or something?
Yeah, that's what strikes me is that we've been fielding these complaints for 5 years now. Since he floated in space and spread his arms, people have been losing their minds over this Jesus imagery. And then the idea that he might carry that through into Batman versus Superman. I don't know, maybe they thought they stamped it out, but like Death of Superman is a Jesus allegory. I don't know how you adapt that book without pulling in those references. It's like you said, it's all pretty base level. It's all pretty
it's not
surface.
I mean, it's beautiful, but he's right in terms of there are way deeper methods of symbolism and allegory that we haven't even got to, and people are just freaking out about the surface level stuff. It's pretty there, and I know a lot of people I've heard a lot of complaints over the years whining about the Superman imagery, about the Jesus allegory, along with Superman, and it just, like, I don't know, it's kind of always been there, and then you get the ones jumping in to yell about the fact that no, he was written by Jews. Yeah, he totally was, but I don't know, I feel like I've said this before, there are a lot of similarities between Moses and Jesus, and so if you start talking about one, you're probably going to get flickers of the other. And so the fact that he's a Jesus parallel now has been standard for years, and if you keep going back, Moses was a perfect symbolism for what was going to come in Jesus, and it's just like it's all kind of washes together. I feel like there's a lot of complaining because people just don't want religion in their comic books, and maybe that's I don't know, maybe that's part of it. And if that's the case, then I'm sorry, because I don't know. That's just not how they. I don't know, guys. I don't read a whole lot of comics. Is there a whole lot of religion in comic books?
No, yeah.
Do we get a lot of religious symbolism, or is Superman really the only one that does this?
Well, I think because of the nature of who Superman is, it's the nature of his character and his upbringing. It's easier to have those religious comparisons. I mean, I haven't necessarily noticed them specifically with anyone else, and as many instances as Superman has. But the funny thing to me is that these parallels are nothing new. Zack didn't invent the Superman is Jesus allegory.
Yeah.
I mean, if we want to talk about religious parallels, we crucify Clark in the first season of Smallville, and it's one of the most iconic images
of Smallville
promotion. And it's crazy that people are he pulled this entirely, out of thin air, and it's no, not even close. This has been the way we talk about Superman for a long time, for better or worse. I think the jury's still out on whether or not it's kind of damaging. But, I mean, if we have a dominant martyr allegory in our culture, and that is what's happening, is we have one dominant martyr allegory, then, that's going to come forth, and that's a good thing to use for imagery and symbolism, and it's the same thing as using biblical references. It's not. I don't think it's necessarily a religious thing. I think it's about what symbolism works and what symbolism is most universal. And the Bible is ubiquitous. It's impossible to get around in our culture. It absolutely, it's the stories we know. It's our mythology, and to not tap into that is very silly. And I also think that superhero comics and religion have a lot in common in the way that these are the stories that we tell that are baseline to our culture.
That's very well said. Thank you.
I would okay,
it's
these
natural.
Yeah.
And here's my thing, this.
Hey,
Al.
Yeah, I'm not going to be here for long.
Okay, well, thanks for being here
I'm
anyway.
just kind of listening in.
Okay. That's perfectly fine. No, my whole thing is that, these criticisms there would be merit to them if Zack Snyder was, being openly offensive and, misusing these religious imagery, It's not he's outright saying Superman is Jesus. Like, it's not like he's not being open. Like, it's ridiculous, and it's like, and what's necessarily wrong with that? And it's just so frustrating because all these people want to jump on and say like, oh, like, what's up with this stupid imagery and blah blah blah, and it's just like, and so many people are like, oh my god, why are there so many layers to these films? God forbid a movie is layered. It isn't just a straight like it's. Like, I see over Twitter over the weekend, it was just so ridiculous to see the amount of people who were just like, oh my god, why are DCEU fans like looking for all these fucking layers in these movies and blah blah blah, and just like, because they're there and it's not too hard to look for them. Like, it's, and then that's the thing too is, and also on the other end, I saw people who were like, oh okay, I didn't see that before, but it's like, oh, so it was okay for you to just blindly accept that you hated the movie without looking into it? And you can tell because these are people who, like, I recognize some of these Twitter handles because they've bashed the movie for years, and some of them are like, oh.
Oh my gosh, really? Guys.
Yeah, and that's why, like, I think some of these people are just go ahead.
What's funny about it to me is them pretending like they cared in the first place, or pretending like they actually engaged with these films, when, like, and I keep saying it, I keep coming back to it, but, like, when I hate something, I usually stop caring about it pretty quickly.
That's me. I don't go search stuff out about it. I don't really give a crap, you know? So.
Like, honestly, like, if you don't want to engage with this film, and you don't like what it did, and you don't like the universe, like, what is your problem with letting it go? Mm-hmm. What is your problem with just, like, releasing this shit? Like...
And that's the funny thing too, like I've mentioned this once before, like, and obviously this movie is not for me, but I hate the movie Frozen, and you don't see me going to like a 12-year-old's Twitter page and being like, young girl, this is why Frozen is awful. No, because I have better things to do with my time, and that would make me an awful person.
To be fair though, Nick, if you had a Frozen hate Twitter, I would enjoy the shit out of that. That would be a really great channel.
Yeah,
I'd be into
it.
it.
Can't do that because that makes
I mean, I was.
It would be hypocritical, yes, but entertaining, absolutely.
I mean, like, occasionally I'll like tear that movie to shreds, but I'll do that like with my friends, with my fiance, like in private. I'm not gonna go out of my way because I know that movie is so important to so many young girls and boys. So for me, it's like I'm not gonna take that away from them just because I didn't like it. Because it's again, like, the movie isn't necessarily made for me specifically, and that's perfectly okay. And look, I go to I have a Disneyland annual pass, and a few times I've gone to the Frozen show. I'll admit, it's a good, well-performed show. I just the story itself means nothing to me. I can still go out and still enjoy that part of it, and like these people put a lot of work into this. It was a good, well-produced show. I still had a good time, but as far as the story and the movie itself, I hate it. And it's annoying to see how much, like, especially at my work, because I work for CVS Pharmacy, so of course they're still selling Frozen merchandise. And it's like, okay, we get it. It's been over 4 years.
You know, the merchandising is such an interesting animal nowadays. You know, it's always been there, but it seems to have reached such an amazing height that you're right. It's like, just make sure that merchandise is still there. Oh, I found it. Okay, do you guys mind if I read this?
Oh, yeah, sure, go ahead.
On Fiona posted the article talking about the illusion, to, Christ and all that kind of thing. And everybody underneath is like, no, really? Like, we saw this forever ago, and, stuff. And Zack came on and said, come on, this is day one level of caring. People who say this is reaching are not aware of truly obscure references. This is fairly straightforward.
Yeah.
So you're right, Rebecca. It's one big long sigh of, I mean, come on, man. It's right there. Like, it's not that hard. Like, there's seriously worse stuff that you could be digging for and still find it. But, it's just right on the top.
I mean, it's not like we're conspiracy theorists and, like, drawing all sorts of crazy connections. Like, you point at Man of Steel, you point at BvS, you say, look, picture is the same. And then everybody else in the DC fandom is like, yeah, picture is the same. And somebody outside of it will be like, stop looking for connections. There are no connections.
But like, even if they weren't real, like, this is the thing that really bothers me, is that, like, it's a fundamental lack of understanding how art works. Because even if they weren't real, even if they weren't intentional, even if those connections were things that Snyder hadn't put intentionally into the film. I think it's amazing that he does put those things intentionally into the film. Every single time,
so much thought. I would my brain would implode trying to keep on.
I more or less wet my pants every time he confirms an obscure fan theory.
I know
he came out with that crap about the horses, and I had to lay down. I was so
and the funny thing too is that
that's too much.
I remember
so excited because we're all
because I saw that
horses.
I saw that as a fan theory. I saw that, but that's the thing is that if it had just been a fan theory, if it had never been substantiated by Zack himself, it still would have been just as valid because that's how art works.
Exactly.
He doesn't have to mean it to be there for it to be there. That's the thing. And that's the thing that people seem to people are down on these people. There's you're reaching and that doesn't make any sense. And it's okay, but have you tried to engage it on any level? Have you tried to actually say could this be there? Because the human brain is complex. Things slip through. Unintentional symbolism happens all the time because we have universal connections to symbols. That's the important thing about these films is that the symbolism in them is that he takes those universal connections, and that's what the Jesus allegory is. It's just a universal connection. It's just a connection that we all have from sharing a dominant culture. That's it.
It's a common ground, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And besides, Zack Snyder doesn't imply that Superman is literally another coming of a god or a Jesus Christ. Even the news montage in Batman v Superman, you can hear how one of the persons who discuss Superman, he says that we're trying to apply ourselves onto him. But maybe in fact he's not some Jesus or a devil character. Maybe he's just a guy trying to do the right thing. And this is pretty much what Man of Steel and Batman v Superman is all about. Superman is not here to lead us as a god. He is a symbol of inspiration that we can all be Superman. And this is why World Engine in Man of Steel is such a beautiful moment, because you can see how simultaneously it goes from Perry White to Superman and backwards, implying that both of these deeds, what Perry does is by staying with Jenny, and Superman going against World Engine, both of these deeds are equally heroic, because sometimes in order to be Superman, it will be enough just to not let person to die alone, like Perry wanted to do with Jenny. And and then you can see how Superman inspires Bruce to become a good man again. He inspires Wonder Woman to come out back to people again. He changes so many people just by being himself, a person who has power and he uses this power to do good. And it all comes back to what Jarrell said, that he will give the people to strive towards.
Well, and if we talk about the Judaism versus the Christianity debate, if you're just looking at Jesus as a prophet, if you're just looking at Jesus as, if you're looking at Jesus as not necessarily the Son of God in the way that, in a way that's different from the way that everybody else is the Son of God, then it's a perfect allegory. It's very much just a man trying to do the right thing, just someone who's struggling with what it means to do the right thing, and martyring himself in the name of saving, souls or whatever. But all of that is easy to draw directed connections to, and regardless of what you believe, there's a lot of parallels there to be drawn.
I think that the problem is like this, and I might have to talk a little quietly, and I can't talk because I am in a elementary school right now. So yeah. But I think the thing about that is I think people are scared to try and put these images to Superman because it ruins their perception of what Superman was to them. And I think this is the issue when it comes to like different generations, you know, because back during like, because I told you guys I was watching a lot of the George Reeves Superman, right? Like on here. And I think the issue is that people think of Superman as this big, smiling Boy Scout hero who's supposed to just save the day and that's it. But now we've changed Superman and made him into more of a three-dimensional character with actual depth. He feels pain, he feels sadness, he goes through all these depressionary things. But people don't want that because that's not what they go to Superman for. That's not what they want Superman to be. And I feel that's more problematic than not having him go through these emotions, because him having depression, sadness, but somehow coming through it while still being Superman is important, because it helps people who go through the same situations and helps them to rise and be just as good as Superman or even better. But some people don't want to have to face that sadness. Like, I get that there's a lot of problems in the world, but sometimes you just gotta be like Superman, not ignore the pain, but find a small little bit of light in your life and keep going on.
Yeah. Yeah, I think at a certain level it's about this insistence that power eliminates problems, and that you don't have any problems if you're powerful. And that's a very blunt view. It's a very it's a very uncomplicated view, and it's a view that erases like mental illness, and it erases certain types of privilege that are invisible. It erases a lot of things.
And it annoys me most now. It annoys me most now because I'm an elementary school teacher and I teach kids with mental illness. And it's like, and I sometimes, I tell them about Superman and how he is similar to them and how he deals with a lot of things too, but he works through it. And it's like, but now that I'm a teacher, now I use Superman's allegory from Man of Steel and BvS to apply it to some of these kids. Like, well, now I just hate that Superman is ignored and we don't put enough emphasis onto him.
That is so awesome.
Yeah.
I'm so happy. Thank you. I didn't know you did that, and that makes me just happy. I want to, like, my kids need to come to your school, man, That's cool.
And that's the awesome thing about like what Zack has been able to do with his characters too, and that like I try to instill the same values in like my own siblings, and like granted, like so like my siblings are all still like they're in high school, so they're a little more like they want to think they're more mature than they are, so they're already kind of in like that I think I'm better than everyone else attitude. But
yeah.
But like the oldest of my younger brothers, he's just about to graduate high school, and ever since like this is getting a little personal, but like some of you guys may notice because I posted this yesterday. So like yesterday it was like the 7-year anniversary of my mom passing away, and ever since she passed away, I was instilling to my brother like, hey, it's okay to be sad. It's okay to be depressed, but no matter what, I'm gonna be here for you. And I told him that even before then, and even now I've been like, hey, I'm not saying it's your responsibility to be there for everyone else, but if you ever see them upset, that's your opportunity to help them out in any way you can. And and that's the thing, that these movies are so inspiring in that way, and that like these movies, even though they are just movies, they inspire me to be better. And that's the powerful thing about what Zack has been able to do, and I think that's amazing. And that's why like all the flack he's been getting lately, I think it's ridiculous. Like, granted, we've been dealing with it for like years now, but it's just like, come on, like. It's literally been 2 years since the movie came out, and you guys are like, again, if you guys claim to not care about it, if you want to think BvS is trash, why are you still talking about it? It does nothing but like waste your time and everyone else's.
I gotta go back to class.
Okay, well, thanks for joining us. It was nice having you on.
Bye.
All right, see ya.
But yeah, so like, and it's that's why it's like, it's been nice having Zack be active with us again. But you can tell he's getting frustrated, and I feel like we haven't seen that side of him come out very often, to have.
He's usually so sweet and just kind of like low-spoken and, under the radar, that now I'm like, whoa, he's talking, holy crap. But honestly, he's still not being, offensive or rude
of course,
just outright nasty. It's just like, all right, well, if you don't see it, then here's an easy one for you. And it really, I don't know. I'm delighted to see him talk. Please tell me more about all the choices you made and the things you were thinking while you made this film and stuff like that. Because not only is it vindication for those of us who have been going, hey, I see this all the way, since it came out, but at the same time, I love hearing about the process of an artist and what they were thinking or trying to do when they made specific choices. Everything that we do in art is typically a conscious choice. Oh, my high school drama teacher's coming at me there, but he's right. Everything is a conscious choice. It's there for a reason. They didn't just randomly go, well, we'll just chuck this in there because there's a point for it. So if you don't understand why it's there, you have to do some thinking about, okay, why is it here? What are they trying to say? And so I always love hearing the artist talk about, well, this is where I was going with this, or that's what I was trying to get at, and sometimes I can be spot on, and sometimes it can be like, wow, I just wasn't even close. That's cool, so it's exciting to hear him talk.
Yeah.
And that's why it's been cool.
Well, I think on a certain level, at this point, I think a defense of the work itself ends up being more of a defense of the fans, and I think that might be the difference.
Agreed.
I don't think that Zack is willing to speak out in favor of necessarily, defending his work and defending, certainly not defending himself. I think that he's very reticent to do that, but it seems like it's sort of a defense of the fans. We have these really amazing essays coming out from Batman vs Superman fans. We have people coming out and saying, the DCEU means so much to me for the following reasons, and all of these great analyses coming out. And it almost feels like Zack has sort of stepped out of the shadows to defend a little bit of that, to say here's the thing, all of those many of those observations that you've made are spot on. Mm-hmm. I think that I think comic book debate has been a big part of this too, in boosting those voices and really making those voices get above the din of the crowd, especially since I think on Twitter the DCU fandom is kind of beset by trolly behavior and bitterness. That having those well-reasoned voices kind of float to the surface, I think has made it a lot easier for him to come forward and be like, hey, I don't really need to explain this to you guys because there's 10 essays out there on every single part of this, and that's what's frustrating. What's frustrating is I'm sure that the people directly involved have read some of these essays and been like, oh yeah, that's that's a 101 level.
Yeah, that's pretty.
That supports things. And then as you do sometimes when you're a flawed human, you roll into the comments and you see just a line of people being like, no. And at a certain point, I'm sure that the pressure builds, and at a certain point you have to be like, okay, well, I'm the guy who made it, so let me tell you that that's actually what's happening.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, you're right. You're right. That's why it feels so good.
Zack's not a self-focused person. He's not one to, he said this before in an interview. He's not one to kind of I don't know, say stand up for himself, but he's not one to be well, I'm Zack Snyder and blah blah blah. He's more focused on other people, I think, and so I think Danielle, you're probably right.
I do believe that he said very directly that Deborah's frustrated that he won't stand up for himself.
Yeah.
So at a basic level, we are talking about a general deficit when it comes to standing up for himself. But if he's anything like me, what'll happen to him, purely from my personal perspective, is that someone comes along and says, this thing you did is stupid, and then you're like, oh, okay, I'll take that under consideration, gee. And then someone comes along and says, you liking this thing that they did is stupid, and then all of a sudden the claws come out, because it's like, you can't talk to that person that way, you can only talk to me that way.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like,
that's why, like,
I can see it being much more easy to come out and be like, hey, so some of these fans are like really right, and you guys all need to chill. What the hell?
I think
I get really upset.
And I think that he really, to a degree, is like, here is my art, and he just puts the film out there, and people, you know. But for the most part, he's like, I'm not going to wade in and get crazy about this because here is my art. It will defend itself or not, you know, and you take it as it is. Here it is. And that's pretty much how it is. He doesn't seem to wade out and be like, no, you're all wrong. You're taking this film wrong. You know, he's just like, here it is. And then he just kind of lets it stand and sees what people do with it. But I do agree. I think once he starts seeing that there's a dedicated fan base, that they're taking a lot of abuse, that they're really, really working hard to say why this means something to them in the face of a lot of hatred, and to tell Zack that he is worth something, you know, after he's taken a lot of drubbing over the last year or two, you know, in terms of he just must have been in a really dark place for a while. You know, I do agree that kind of protective element, it would definitely come up in me and it would be like, no, you know, you can post your nasty crap about me and you can call me this in your article and say that I'm all this and all that and be totally wrong, but don't you start getting on all these other people. They're totally right, you know. So yeah, I think you're right, and that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, and that's what
and these young people in the fandom too, like so many of the fandoms, people in the fandom who are prominent are very young people. And for me, that gets me up right away. I'm like, oh my gosh, you don't pick on this, like, you know, from my perspective, this little tiny baby girl made of clay. I'm like, stop, you're putting dents in that. You leave her alone. Come pick on me, you know, the fully grown adult. Yeah. You know. Yeah,
I can handle it, it's fine, you know. So yeah, you're right.
I get really annoyed, like, when people, like, talk crap about the movies, I'm like, well, you know, they've been doing that. Obviously, it annoys me, but I don't really, you know, want to punch anybody or anything. But when people go after the fans, like, call it going after them, that's when I get ticked off, because it's like, they like something. You're going to go after them for that? Like, I don't want to bring the MCU into this, but, not really the MCU, but Anthony Mackie? Is that his name?
Yep.
Yeah, his last name is Mackie. So when Mackie was with that interviewer, I don't really care that he clearly doesn't like Man of Steel, because there's a lot of people who clearly don't like Man of Steel. It's the fact that he insulted the guy for liking it, you know?
Yeah,
like, that's what gets me.
Yeah, that pretty much, I was like, oh, and you're off of my list, you know. That was amazing how quickly that happened, you know. You can't just say, oh, well, that's cool, I didn't like it so much, but that's cool, you did, you know. Instead, he got kind of nasty, and it was like, okay. You don't get to ridicule the guy interviewing you because he liked a movie you didn't. That's weird. So, yeah.
Well, and that's like
I'll go with you there.
Like, looking at last year...
You're also talking to someone in the film industry, so, like, maybe you take a second and think, like, you know, oh, well, maybe this person has a good reason to like this movie. Yeah, I just feel like when I encounter people who like a movie I don't, I'm not like, wow. Like, well, sometimes that's not true. When I encounter people the movie I don't, the correct reaction that I should have... I'm not painting myself as a moral paragon here, because I can remember times when I've done this. But the correct reaction that I should have is, oh wow, like someone really appreciates that movie. How interesting. I wonder why. You know? Yeah. Not like what my immediate ugly reaction is sometimes, which is, wow, that person likes that movie a lot. I think I like this person less. Like that immediate reaction is dumb, and it doesn't do anything, and it doesn't help anyone, and it also, like, I mean, like, if you're talking to someone in the film industry who is obviously very invested in film, you have to wonder why they like something that they like.
Yep.
Be curious about it.
Well, and that, like, way back in the day, and I mean way back, but, like, there were serious debates about which Dumbledore was better. You know, fans, they're such boobies.
Oh, God.
But, you know, there's the Richard Harris sect, and then there's the Michael Gambon sect, and never the twain shall meet. And I was like best buddies with one of the rare ones who adored Michael Gambon. And the other ones would just like constantly pound on her for liking it. And it was like, dude, shut up, you know? Like, she's allowed to like it. And finally one day I'm like, okay, seriously, Jamie, why do you like him so much? And she's like, because he doesn't look like he could blow over if you just breathe on him wrong. You know, Richard was tall and skinny and you know, old, and he just seemed so frail, you know. And then she had a couple other different reasons, and I was like, okay, that's legit, you know. I prefer the other one, but kudos to you. And she's like, thanks. And after that, it was just so easy to sit and chat with anything we wanted to talk about. Like, you can actually make a friend talking to other people. And very often you have to be careful not to put your own thoughts about something onto the other person. Like, if you're like, I hate this movie because of these reasons, they may very well be legit reasons. But when somebody else says, oh, I like that movie, it's entirely possible that they have never even once entertained those reasons that you hate it as, you know, as anything. When they watch it, they're thinking entirely different things. And so you can't look at them and go, well, they're obviously this, and this because they like it. What a piece of crap. It's okay. So why exactly do you like it? You know, I would like to hear. And they might come out with radically different reasons that are totally different. And yes, they might want to, you know, like, you both are valid, you know, you both have opinions, and that's okay. Your opinion is valid. But we can't just spend our time, you're right, Danielle, just immediately going, well, don't like you anymore.
Well, that's the beautiful thing about art, and I think that's what frustrates me about the DCEU question and the Snyder question so thoroughly. What frustrates me is that when these people who bring these criticisms are so inconsistent with their criticism. Like, I find it fascinating that people don't like a thing I like. I think that's really interesting. And for me to follow up on that and ask a lot of questions like I did the first 3 years, because I did, you can look at, I mean, like, if you search the Man of Steel tag on my blog, you will find me mercilessly questioning people. Mercilessly, just you know, just poking and prodding and trying to get at what it was that defines someone who hated this film, and to the degree that people hate it. And the most frustrating thing is that, like, the answers aren't straightforward, and trying to figure out why these people didn't like these films is something that gets obscured in the process. And, like, I think it's endlessly fascinating that people have different perspectives, and I think it's important that people do. I don't think that it would be a good work of art, honestly. I don't think that a good work of art is the kind of art that everybody walks up to it, looks at it, and goes, oh yeah, that's definitely an apple. Like, that's not, to me, that doesn't do anything. That's not what art does, in my opinion. What art does is reveal your perspective, and you can learn so much about someone by figuring out why they liked or disliked a film. And really great pieces of art bring out really basic nature questions about people. You get to learn about someone's personality. You get to learn about someone's value system. And I think that having conversations about Man of Steel and Batman vs. Superman are those kind of conversations. Mm-hmm. They reveal something about the person you're talking to. And if you're not interested in that, and you're not curious about that, the conversation is worthless to you. And why are you still in it?
Yeah, I completely agree. Completely agree.
And that's why I'm always baffled with the fact that, like, when I try to have conversations with some of these people, most times, like, they end up being dicks just for the sake of being dicks. I'm gonna try to be like, hey, like, we have bad eggs in our fandom too. Like, there are people who are like, oh, you're so stupid if you don't like the DCEU, you don't like Zack Snyder. Those people are toxic, and those people, okay, you're a fan, obviously, but don't be a dick about it, because then now you're just being a hypocrite.
Yeah. Unfortunately, every fandom has that sect, you know. But
yeah, but like, the thing is, like, I'll talk to like the haters who are like, oh, the DCEU fandom was awful, and the movies are suck, blah, blah, blah. And I'll try to talk to some of these people, and at the end of the day, like, some of them, they're just like, oh, well, I just didn't like the movies. Like, actually, most times they don't, but the last few instances I've had, the people aren't terrible people, but for whatever reason, they get really angry and get filled with hatred when it comes to the DCEU specifically, and the DCEU fans specifically. And I find that very fascinating because, like, okay, and I'll scroll through their Twitters to kind of see what kind of person they are. And other than attacking DCEU fans, they don't seem like bad people. They seem like just regular, normal people. But for whatever reason, it's the DCEU and the fans that trigger them into being an asshole. So I'm just curious as to what causes that. Like, what causes that kind of reaction from people? Like,
well, and it's like it's such a honest waste of time on certain times, and that's what's really frustrating for me. Is like this last encounter that I had on my Tumblr, where basically I was just trying to figure out why someone didn't like it, and we talked, and they brought up really interesting perspectives. I mean, the flawed perspectives that I feel didn't engage the film properly. And, like, you know, I mean, half of the time when you're midway through this conversation, you realize that they don't remember basic things that happened in the film, and you're like, I guess I'm talking to someone who's not prepared to have this conversation. All right. But, like, then, like, you know, then I go and search the notes, and at some point this person has just said, well, it's just an ugly film. Like, it's the way that he uses color says a lot about how he feels about Superman. And I'm like, okay, well, now I don't want to talk to you at all because I think that you're not terribly smart. Because holy crap, what a weird thing! Like, just to be like,
that is a weird thing to say.
The way he uses color really says something. Like the way, no, it doesn't. It doesn't.
I think I get what
if you really want to argue about the way Snyder uses color, I am not the person who's going to have a conversation with you about that ever. I'm not gonna argue about muted colors or what they contribute to the film or take away from the film. I don't care. Honestly, I think it's the last thing that we should be talking about. I think that the fact that we've had this conversation about the freaking tone of the film for 5 years now is ridiculous. It doesn't make any sense. It's a nonsensical conversation. I mean, it got so nonsensical that poor Ben had to just mention it. Had to just be like, hey, it's nuts that we're talking about the tone of the film only. It's nuts that all we talk about is the tone of the film. Yeah. And if that's really your number one concern, we don't have a conversation to have. Like, there's no conversation that we can have because I'm not going to talk to you about freaking color grading because I don't care. And, like, you're not going to talk to me about the freaking actual plot of the film and the writing involved and the imagery involved and everything else that went into the film because you are hung up on filters. You are hung up on someone choosing the wrong freaking Instagram filter for their freaking movie. That's what you're mad about. You're mad about something that inconsequential, then, like, we can't have a conversation because nothing we're going to say to each other will make sense. Yeah. And that's the thing that makes me crazy.
I think both of these, like, what Nick's question about what gets that kind of VMA reaction and your comment about tone is really fascinating to me because they seem to come together in my weird little mind to be almost the same thing. In the end, I think it's what Al said. They're threatened because it's different than their view of what Superman should be. So not only is he realistic and has feelings and, you know, maybe has moments of self-doubt and is not perfect from the very get-go, but even the color tone of the film reflects that. It's not all bright and colorful and cheery and Saturday cartoony and look, everything's happy, you know, and stuff all the time. It's a little bit more muted and it's a little bit more real. Like, haven't you ever grown up and just suddenly looked around and been like, you know, I mean, the world is beautiful, but it's never as vibrantly colorful as, like, so many art pieces try to make it be, you know, especially if you go out on a gray overcast day and there's just a little bit of a sheen over everything that kind of dulls it a little bit, you know, and you go, okay, this is where we are. And so in many ways, even the color tone of that film is that going, look, this is Superman, boom, in the real world. And I don't even think that people can articulate it that well. All they know, all they take in is, this is not the guy I want to see on screen. And then they start eventually finding the reasons, but they can't articulate it well enough. Because you're right there. He's saying, just the way he colors the movie says a lot about how he feels about Superman. What in the absolute heck is that supposed to mean? But it actually means he's saying he's not bright and colorful and happy like I want him to be. And you can tell by the way Zack is coloring that film. Do you see it? Do you? Well, yeah, of course we do. That's kind of why we like it. And
that's
so
the thing too, is in the
it's
course of
fascinating,
this argument,
you know.
in the course of this argument, we had all sorts of quibbles about the reasons behind what Clark is doing and why he's doing them, and the things that Superman honestly, physically, like literally did, because this person believed that that Clark kills General Amajad. Absolutely, 110% believes that. And that was something that definitely, I mean, if I believed that, it would definitely color the rest of the movie for me. It definitely would. I just, can't even fathom that interpretation of the film. But, like, the thing is that, like, when I'm questioning why these things have happened, like, I have to sort of look into it and be like, okay, well, they're interpreting this color grading as, like, I don't know, as being like a dystopian view or something, as being like, we're supposed to find Superman like scary or something. Like, interpreting the way that this film is shot and the way that it's lit as something that we're supposed to interpret as, I don't know, dark or menacing. And I think that says so much about our relationship to the real world versus our relationship to the fake world that most superhero movies support. This idea that you have to turn up the sunlight to 1,000% and everything has to be like hyper lit and everything has to be like hyper colored. Really says something about like how we feel about the real world, and the way that that realism somehow makes everything depressing, somehow makes everything menacing. And the idea that the real world is menacing is really an interesting perspective to come at a Superman film from, because I feel like Man of Steel was so much about the opposite. I feel like Man of Steel was so much about teaching me that things weren't as bad as I thought they were. Yeah. And I think Batman vs. Superman was about teaching me that things weren't as bad as I thought they were. Because I was open to that lesson, because I walked into Batman vs. Superman with no expectations and no idea what I was going to get hit by. And I mean, like, I think I resisted the lesson. I think that I really planted my feet against Batman vs. Superman when I first saw it. I really felt impugned upon by that lesson. But I think it is the lesson that it teaches, and I think that it's crazy to say like this is a dystopian view, this is a nihilistic view, when I think that the films are teaching the exact opposite thing. It's using a realistic lens to do so. It's saying, like, here's the thing, I can't teach you that the real world isn't that bad. I can't teach you that there's brightness in the world without showing you the real actual world, because you're not going to believe this lesson unless I show you what the world actually is first.
Mm-hmm. Completely agree. And the thought just popped in as you were talking that I think in some ways that's why people responded so well to Wonder Woman, because she never really, how do I put it? She came out of a perfect world and into a very imperfect one, and yet still, even in those moments of doubt and here and there and stuff like that, they were minimal, fleeting, and then over very quickly when she was proven right and had to fight Ares. And she never really descended into actual self-doubt, wondering, hard times, difficulty and stuff like Clark has. And, I mean, in the same DCEU, in the same universe. And so, I think people just want their heroes to come in to a crappy world and never be affected by it. And that is, honestly, for me, one of the most fallacious and lame interpretation. I don't want my heroes to be like that, because then it just teaches me that I will never be a hero, you know. It's just like Arto was saying. It's like I want them to struggle so that I could see them struggle and go, you're right. Okay, I could still do this. You know, even Batman in BvS is like, you know what? You're still redeemable. Look how far you've fallen. You're still redeemable. This is okay. Pull yourself up and make it better. You know, men are still good. We can do better. We have to. We can. You know, this is what I want to hear. This is inspiring. That's what makes them a hero to me. Not because they somehow float above it and never actually get affected by the crap that is our world that we live in.
Mm-hmm. Even if you don't directly relate with the heroes themselves, even if you're not looking at it from the perspective of saying, like, you know, I can learn something from Batman's journey, I can learn something about coping from Superman's journey. I think that it's for me, when I'm watching, you know, when I'm watching the Donner film, when I'm watching, I mean, like, and Donner's not as bright and shiny as everyone paints him to be, but when I'm looking at that Superman, there's instances of him in the comics, there's instances of him in some pernicious media, that Superman who is above problems, who is sort of above the crowd, who does definitely, like, you know, it doesn't struggle on a human level and has, like, sort of humanity stripped away. That Superman, I just feel, doesn't see me. You know, doesn't see me, doesn't see people I care about, doesn't see, you know, doesn't see us as the people who are actually marginalized. That's the privileged man's Superman. That's the Superman who comes along to solve problems that are solvable. And I think that a lot of people in this nation right now, especially, are dealing with problems that are unsolvable, are dealing with problems that don't have easy answers. And to come along and have a Superman who feels like he wouldn't see that, who feels like he wouldn't be the Superman who could solve those problems, who could really come forward and help you, you know, carry whatever burden you're carrying, especially when it comes to looking at this through the lens of mental illness and it not being a solvable problem, it being something that's just a burden you need to carry. If you have a Superman who knows the answers, if you have a Superman who only deals with solvable problems, then you basically have erased the struggles of those people, and you've denied Superman to the people who have problems that are unsolvable. And I think that's what's really, really offensive to me about that view of Superman. That view of Superman denies him to large groups of people, and I think that's shitty. I think Superman is for everyone.
It is, and you're right that it makes it easier for them to ignore those problems too. That's why they want their hero to be like that, because then they can, you know, sit in their privilege and turn a blind eye and not really care about what's happening outside of themselves. Sorry, continue.
Yeah. And, you know, there was a TV spot about Justice League that uses Lois Lane's line about there are heroes among us, not to make us feel small, but to make us, but to remind us what makes us great. And
right?
I think.
I got teary. I just got teary. Shit.
I know, it's so beautiful.
What's especially beautiful about this is that she implies that these heroes, that they are great because of us. I mean, they were born because of our ideas, first of all, and they became heroes in a world that we surround, meaning that we inspired them in the first place to become these figures that can inspire us back and even stronger than before. And this is why Justice League kills me so much, because that world is not realistic anymore, and Superman can pretty much do everything for you. You don't need to do anything. Like,
right?
look in the sky.
Just look up and there. Everything's cool, you know. And don't forget to talk about true darkness, even though it sounds like, you know, something that my grandmother would have, like, you know, cross-stitched into a freaking sampler. And, you know, it's not really, you're not acknowledging the true darkness, you know, you're just chatting.
This is why I love X-Men, because X-Men exists in a universe that has real problems, and they interact with those problems all the time.
Well, that's the thing I loved about the DCEU initially, and that they just ripped away from us in Justice League. And it's like, and that was the thing that, like, we had stuff like that established in the Everybody Knows montage of Justice League, that, like, seeing these real world problems, seeing these like white nationalists tear apart this Muslim woman's, you know, shop.
Food stand.
It was just that part was heartbreaking. And then the rest of the movie is just like one long bad joke, and it's just like, what the it's just like that was the last
clear.
It's just go ahead.
No, you go ahead. You're like trying to get your words out, and I'm like, I'll shut up.
No, it's like at the end of that montage, which for me were like the last true moments where like the world felt real, like it felt like our own. And watching it, I was just like the point in the movie for me, and I brought this up previously too, in that there was the one scene, obviously, with there was the reshot scene of Lois and Martha. That's the start of the scene is that stupid news reporter. Yeah. And it's just like that. How did that feel like an actual news segment? Like it looked crappy. It looked like, if anything, it was like some high school news team. Like, like that's it. That's what I'm like. What? And then the whole scene with that guy coming into the room when Lois and Martha were talking, and he's talking about her source, and like what?
Oh, brother.
I get like it stops feeling like
the overtones of that whole scene was just
God,
like,
I know.
Wow. It's been 2 films, and I haven't had any of this, and then suddenly I get smacked between the eyes with that. And I'm like, what in the absolute crap just happened? Like, I didn't miss it. I wasn't sorry it was gone. Like, I could not believe
that's
it.
Why, like,
you could just tell the difference of tone in that entire film. Like, I shouldn't say tone, but you could. People keep calling it a Frankenstein, and they're entirely right. Because you get the stuff that was clearly Zack shot footage of people, of the whole world coming apart at the seams. You know what I mean? It's showing that, like, you know, Superman is gone, hope is gone, humanity's gone to crap, you know, and they are depressed and alone and violent towards each other, and, you know, this is bad. And then we suddenly skate into Saturday morning cartoon land and never ever address the public again. Like, never address the world as a whole, never address, you know, the issues that are going on, or the symbol of hope that Superman must have been to them and his return. Nothing. And then you're right, it's like, okay, so it's like somebody just ripped a piece of Marvel movie off and just stitched it in place. And I mean, it is truly a Frankenstein film.
This is just the place where I get a little bit conspiracy theorist, and I just kind of run off the rails, because I can't believe, and I don't know if I'll ever believe, that Warner Brothers trashed this cut because of some, you know, bloggers complaining about tone, because critical reception was that important. I just don't buy it. I don't think that it's complex enough. I don't think that it's a pressing enough answer. And I think that if we had a different administration, that we would have a different Justice League movie. And I know that that's me with my tin hat on and everything, but, like, it's so on the nose, it's so of the moment, and so many things that made it into the beginning of that movie foreshadowed a film that was going to be a little bit politically explosive, that was going to be what Batman vs. Superman was subtextually. I think that a lot of the subtext was going to leave, because you can't make a film of that size and that scope without hitting things directly on the nose. And I think that there being, a more diverse cast made it possible for us to have those conversations in a more frank and direct way. And we've seen a backlash. We have seen a backlash from the political shift that's happened in this country over the last 2 years. And I think that, we see queer characters just fucking disappear. And we've seen, all of these steps toward progress that we've been making get rolled back and get shoved under, and we're back to the point where we're just happy that these characters exist and not talking about how they should be treated and what good representation looks like and all of those things. And I think that walking back of that conversation, I cannot believe that that's not a huge part of what happened to Justice League. And I think that, it's hard to make an argument for it because this all happened under cover of freaking darkness. But the fact that it did happen under cover of freaking darkness, instead of Warner Brothers just coming out and saying, here's the thing, doing exactly what happened with the Solo movie, which was just someone being like, hey, we really didn't like what this director did, so we're going to get rid of this director and replace them with this director, and everyone will be fine with that. But Warner Brothers didn't go that route. Warner Brothers did a bunch of sneaky shit that was weird, and it was awkward, and it didn't make any sense on the face of it, and then they lied about it at great length. And I just feel like the only reason to lie about it is that if it was a bigger problem than tone, that if it was an ongoing bigger problem. And I think that, Batman vs. Superman rides a really scary line for a lot of people. It rides very close to saying things that superhero movies have been threatening to say for generations. And that's the thing, is that, why did the mainstream embrace Nolan? It's a good question. Why did the mainstream embrace Nolan and not Snyder? It's a really good question, and I think we need to continue to come back to it and really, really studiously ask it, because I think that it's a really important political question. Mm-hmm. I'm removing the soapbox. I'm done now.
Throw it over here. I'm sure I'll get on it.
No, and I completely agree with everything you said. It's just, it's so, and that's the thing, I'm still not happy. I haven't really been happy with Disney, how they've been treating their movies for a while now. But looking at the whole Solo situation, at least they're somewhat transparent to be like, we didn't get along with the directors, here's the new director to reshoot literally the entire movie. And it's okay, why couldn't Warner Brothers have just done that? Well, because they had to be in the mindset of we still need to trick the Zack Snyder fans into still thinking they're getting that, because they're the ones who, even when the movie was bad, was still giving us the money. So we need to make them think that it's his, so we'll still get that Zack Snyder money, but then also please the fans who don't like Zack Snyder, who will know that this isn't Zack Snyder. But then you alienate both.
It felt like they were trying to play both sides. You're right. You're totally right.
And it's ridiculous, and that's why
I just wonder, based on that opening scene, based on that montage, what was in that first cut? What did it look like? And if it, I think we were on the cusp of something really, really big and really exciting in the DCEU, and I think that moment was shut down, and I think it was shut down for a reason. I think that it was, and that reason is big. That reason, I think, is bigger than, we didn't really like the film that they produced, or we were so afraid that the critics were going to trash it, and we want mainstream acceptance. I think all of those things are probably part of it, but they just don't seem big enough. They just don't seem like big enough reasons. And, I've been high on conspiracy theories lately, but
it's also possible that they're just plain money-grubbing idiots, It's just kind of the...
There's also that this move was so stupid.
They tried so hard to make it Marvel-like,
It's very hard for me to believe that they're this dumb. I think that's part of it. I think part of it is that it's so hard to believe.
Sometimes I'm surprised at how stupid humans can be. So
they're so dumb. It's bewildering, the scale of how stupid this move was. And, like, I get that there was a lot of money moving around. There was a lot of people who just didn't give a shit. And I can understand the perspective of not giving a shit. But if you actually cared about this film and then released what we got in theaters from Justice League, you're so dumb. You're just, like, wow. You know?
Yeah.
I mean, like, maybe the answer is that nobody at Warner Brothers gives half a shit about Justice League, but, like, there has to have been someone who, like, was earnestly thinking this is the best version of the movie that we can put out.
I just don't find that hilarious. But,
like,
everybody's been pointing to him, and I have to admit I can see it, you know, so.
I just imagine, like, some Warner Brothers
exec. I did not say Jeff Johns. Anyway, moving on.
I imagine, like, some Warner Brothers exec sitting in the room being like, good. And then just sends it off. And it's like,
I mean, they were even promoting the movie with the shots that are not in the actual movie. I mean,
that's what really takes me up.
Isn't that a major sign of their stupidity? Like, wow,
yes.
It
was like, you guys, you didn't even bother, and part of me feels again like it just comes down to money. Well, we already spent all the money to get this promo stuff up and running that was based off of something different because, you know, they started early, and I mean, that's what they do. So it's like, now we have it, and we spent the money, so we're already pouring millions of dollars into reshoots and bad CGI, so maybe we should just go ahead and just run it. And I think what ticks me off about the stupidity of that action, and on all of their actions, you're right, Danielle, it is kind of astounding now that I really think about the depth of it, was that apparently they thought we were that dumb too. You know, they thought that we were that stupid, that we wouldn't look at the trailer and look at the film and go, wait a minute, there's like, you know, 60% of the trailer missing. What's going on here? They really thought that we were so dumb we'd sit down in front of that and go, oh yeah, that's totally Zack Snyder. You know, like, they really thought we were that amazingly stupid that we would just swallow it and give them our money. And that is really insulting. And I kind of want to go smack all of them now. And also, I just cannot help but think about the girl who seriously thought that Superman scene they related as a deleted scene was Joss, and now I want to find her and smack her too. So, because she is that kind of stupid that would be like, yeah, that was a Zack Snyder movie. No, it freaking wasn't.
Well, no, and that was, and the sad thing too is because, like, I know, because that's the chick from Collider, and I'm watching that video.
I just couldn't believe she actually said that. I was like, are you kidding me?
Yeah,
like,
it was so ridiculous because,
like, tell the difference. What?
And the guy in the video, I guess he liked Man of Steel. He's a Superman fan. I mean, I've watched Collider, so I know exactly who they are and kind of what. But, like, she is a self-proclaimed fan of film, and obviously I could tell she leans more towards Marvel than DC. And she jumped up, whatever. But it's so obvious that she really doesn't give a shit because it was. I also, all of Josh's reshoots were when Henry had the mustache. So how can you possibly think that that the deleted scene was Joss? Because first of all, Henry looks like a normal human person. And secondly, Joss would have had a lot more stupid dialogue. He would have been like, what's that suit? There's a black suit. Maybe I could put that on. Oh, wait, here's my suit. Like, he would have had some stupid dialogue like that. Also, I don't think
Joss... have him talking to himself. What should I do?
I just feel like
I'll bring Lois in, and when she can talk about how he's itchy again, you know, that's what we'll do.
I mean, are people literally, like, I know that there are a lot of people who really didn't pick up on the reshoots and really can't tell the difference, and that's fine. I'm also really bad at detecting bad CGI, but, like, I feel like some people, like, the degree to which people think that the mustache situation was not a total disaster, half of them must be lying, because I accept that there are people out there who really can't tell the difference, who are really like, oh, well, you know, like, I've spent hours and hours looking at Henry Cavill's face, so I'm differently acclimated to recognizing his actual
features. Maybe not everybody's
features.
as invested in his face as we are.
Yes. I mean, when it turns from his mouth to not his mouth, maybe I wouldn't have noticed if I wasn't so obsessed with his mouth. But I'm gonna leave that be. I'm gonna leave that right there. You guys can go wherever you want with it. But if I were not so obsessed, I might not notice. But like, people complain about bad CGI. Like, it's epidemic, the complaints about bad CGI. To a degree where, like, sometimes I'll just, like, hear someone start talking about CGI and I'll just tone them out because I'm done. Yeah, I don't care.
I'm the same way. Same way.
You know.
Okay, also, but here's what can I just go ahead and say
but
this?
Like those kind of complaints don't mean anything to me. But like I hear them all the time. So the idea that so many people weren't bothered by that reshoot stuff, that weren't bothered by how heavy that CGI was and how bad it was and how poorly executed it was, because of time constraints. This isn't any shade against the people who worked on it, because I know that the people who worked on it had like 25 minutes to do the freaking work.
Yeah, they had time and were yanked off of other things. So
I know. I feel so bad for them because and even that's the sad thing is that like when they were
is that like I don't believe the people who say that they don't see the bad CGI. I don't believe the people who say they can't tell the difference between Zack's shots and reshoots, because it's not even a difference of tone. It's that literally the footage is marked, you guys. You can tell what a reshoot is because you can look at Henry's mouth and figure it out.
And Ben.
Mustache is a gift to us, you know, because now there's no question about what was a reshoot and what wasn't. It's pretty clear.
Yeah, well, that's the it's so frustrating, and that's why like, I was gonna mention this earlier in talking about like people complain about bad CGI and like the whole complain about Doomsday looking so ugly in Batman v Superman. Okay, were you ever supposed to want to fuck Doomsday? Like. Like, seriously, the amount of people, I mean, seriously, the amount of people who's like, Doomsday is so ugly. Was he ever supposed to be attractive in the first place?
He wasn't supposed to be, gorgeous. My gosh, he's an abomination. That's the whole point.
Is that why everybody is sort of cool with what Steppenwolf looks like? Because he has a human face?
I guess, yeah.
So they're like, well, I could have sex with that villain, so he's fine.
Okay,
and even then, like, Steppenwolf doesn't look awful.
If it's bestiality to have sex with a villain, then that villain is unacceptable.
No, it's not even bestiality, it's CG-iality.
As it can be.
At that point, it's not even bestiality, it's a CG-iality, damn.
CG-iality.
No, and also, and I'll even admit, like, the last battle looks awful. The whole last battle in Justice League just looks awful. But up until then, Steppenwolf, obviously he's heavily CGI, but like, I don't think he looks awful up until then. Because at that point, that whole battle was completely redone.
You could tell where they ran out of time, and they started at the beginning of the film.
He's all right, but also like we get these concept art. This concept art of Steppenwolf.
He was terrifying.
That like removes like his face and actually has like something like actually creepy, like a creepy looking like alien thing, not just like a dude with extra armor who looks like he's been through some shit. Like, honestly, you could take a regular human and roll them around in, like a volcano or something and get the same effect. And then put some armor on him and it'd be the same thing.
And a horn chin, yeah.
The idea of Steppenwolf being, like, very alien-looking and something that we haven't encountered before, I think, is very powerful. And I don't... I think that it's a mistake to have removed it from the film entirely.
Well, well, another thing too is that it creates a continuity error. Granted, we've already mentioned this at length before, but like in the scene in Batman v Superman where they show the Liquid Geo form of Steppenwolf, he looks completely different, and that was. I think Zack originally was going to use. Obviously, he was going to use that, but I think Warner Brothers came in and was like, "You have to make him look more human, otherwise people are going to complain." But yet, people complained anyway. So
presumably because they need to be attracted to him.
They're working off of the Loki theory and every other kind of theory where it's classic that they're like, oh, I hate this guy, he's such a bad guy, but he's so hot. and they're trying to work into that, and it's like
it's creepy. It's disturbing.
That actually explains all of the Joker movie bullshit, quite honestly.
Yeah, and this is why we can't break past this ceiling that's been imposed on us of what these films need to be. It is so frustrating that, heaven forbid, you know what? He's an alien, okay? He's from a totally different place. It's alright if he doesn't look like us. He could have come out and had 87 arms and, and a flower for a face, and I'd have been like, yeah, he's an alien. I would have gone with that because he is a freaking alien. I find it
but could you have sex with it though?
To believe that all aliens look like us, and I'll take Superman. I will take him. That's fine. But not every single one should be humanoid, and we cannot seem to possibly break past this ceiling of the villain has to be good looking. It needs to be serious, but not too serious. It's got to have the jokes. It cannot possibly address the current political climate in this country. Don't you dare. And by gum, don't you even make them question themselves for 1 second. They're superheroes. Dang it. And this is why I'm kind of done if things don't change, because I'm really done with that, and I thought I was getting something different, and then we got Justice League, and it was like, oh, look, my joy just went away, and now I find it hard to care about superhero films, so, yeah. Anyway, continue.
The original concept art of Steppenwolf for Justice League and his look in Batman v Superman gives a more literal meaning to what Lex said, that devils come from the sky. And Steppenwolf from the concept arts and in Batman v Superman, that liquid hologram, he actually looks like a freaking devil from outer space.
Exactly. And it's perfect, and that's what it's supposed to be.
Yeah. And the planet where he comes from is called Apocalypse. It's pretty much a physical manifestation of hell, pretty much. But of course, Warner Brothers thought that this Steppenwolf will be too scary for children, and we need to make a movie children-friendly as much as possible. So let's make him humanoid.
This thing that we have about villains is so toxic, and I love Loki is the thing. And I feel really, really hypocritical saying so. I think I really enjoy Loki. I enjoyed
him until he became such a poster boy for all the chicks who want to drool on it, lick it, and say he's hot. And I was like, I guess I'm out. Never mind.
Ruined Loki for me. Absolutely, 110%. But I think that he is, and I like that gray villain. I like the villain where you're kind of like, I can see where they're coming from. But the idea, there's an idea that's happening, which is that we can't have anything else. We can't have a villain who's villainy. We can't have a villain who we hate, and that is crazy, and also I think very toxic. It makes it really hard to point at what is what we define as bad behavior, what we define as morally corrupt, what we define. It's very much this two sides idea infiltrating our media, and I think that's really, really toxic, because you're talking about you can't. There's no two sides to a Holocaust. There's not two sides to that. There's people who are hurting people, and there's people who are being hurt. Yes, and if we can't have this situation where every single villain. It's interesting for us to connect with villains. It's interesting for us to explore our inner darkness. But at a certain point, we have to be able to say, this is where the line is. Captain America isn't a fucking Nazi. He never will be. That's just not a thing. Because Nazis, that's where we draw our line. That's the line in the sand. We go no further. It's not Nazi is now going to be a political affiliation that we're going to give, credence to in this country. And it's very important that we have a conversation with Nazis to figure out how, why they're Nazis. It's no, once they're Nazis, they're dead to us. Once they're Nazis, they are on the other side of the fence, and we are done with them. And that is something that we should be able to portray on screen. And that is something that the idea that we can't have anything besides Loki hurts.
Yeah.
This idea that every single villain needs to be Loki, every single villain needs to be complicated, needs to have, complex motives, and that he kind of needs to be our fault a little bit. And I think that's what's so refreshing about Snyder's Lex, is that he never pins Lex on Superman.
No.
There are a lot of adaptations that do, and I think one of Smallville's faults actually is going in this direction too often. Is that
Lex
this idea
Lex because of Superman or because of
Clark?
Clark?
This idea that Clark is an inextricable part of Lex's origin story is fine, but when you go a little bit too close to that and say, like Lex would never exist without Superman, that's nonsense.
Yeah.
That's nonsense.
It is nonsense.
Don't put that on Clark.
No,
and that's the thing, is that Snyder never does. Snyder says,
never does.
Here's the thing. Lex was shitty before he ever showed up. He most likely killed his dad, maybe in cold blood. And, that situation is ongoing. The only thing that Superman is to Lex Luthor is a trigger for his already fucked up sense of morality.
Right?
That's
this
it.
Guy shows
That's
up.
it.
That's
He's
all
a
that
trigger.
happened was this guy shows up and Lex goes, I hate him.
Yep.
I need to take him down. That's it. They never even meet. There's nothing except him going, he, like, these people are worshiping him. He's got all this power. No, absolutely not. Which is why I was just kind of bummed that it was cut from the theatrical version of BvS that he says, I don't hate the sinner, I hate the sin, and your sin is existing. Because right there, that's all it is. He's here, and he exists, and I don't like it. So he needs to go.
That's the thing. Why can't Zod just be a monster? Why can't Steppenwolf just be a monster? Why can't we just have, straight up self-indulgent sort of monster slaughter where we're saying, like, here's the thing, like, we destroy monsters.
See, if you
we
go too
fight
far,
them with our
you get
fists.
like the bad guys that are totally one layer and extremely boring, and so I get why people gravitate to the gray, but at the same time, like, Lex, for me, is a really well done villain. And he's bad. You're right, he's straight up bad. There's no gray area to that. And yes, he has his reasons, abuse as a child,
and we understand
kind of
them,
thing.
and we understand
how
them.
he got there, but it doesn't excuse the fact that he's here now and doing the things that he's doing. And so I agree that I think in many ways people hated his Lex because he either didn't fit the comic version that they wanted him to be, which is amazing because, wow, or he wasn't, like, Jesse is Jesse. He's a little bit small, he is not somebody you look at and go, oh my gosh, he's drop dead gorgeous. He's not amazingly handsome, and you can't lust after him as much. And so, that is immediately a strike against him. And, but I don't know, once they shaved the hair off, like, all he had to do was look at the camera and it was like, whoa, that is Lex Luthor that ever did Lex Luthor. That is like, yep, that's him. So, but I don't know. It's such a delicate line to tiptoe on, I think. And it's kind of frustrating, but I never mind having bad guys who are just straight up bad guys. That's okay. And if you want a gray guy, well, that's what Batman was for. He was a morally gray person throughout most of the film. And the best part is that people are like, oh no, like, guys, I can't ever go to Taco Bell again. Like, every time I go there, I hear somebody in the background talking about my movies. And I'm like, and so there's people behind me eating tacos, and this one woman's like, I didn't like Batman versus Superman. That was, and I'm sorry I'm doing this voice because that's how she sounded, but, like, I did not like that movie. And I'm like, I already, like, sat up straight, and my husband looked at me, and I'm like, I got this look on my face, and she goes, because in that movie, they portrayed Batman as a bully, and I didn't like that. And it was like, of course he was. Yes, he was. Like, you've identified that. Good job. But did you ever stop to wonder why he was that way? Like, did you ever stop to notice that the film was going, he's gone too far, he's over the edge, this is bad, and at the end he goes, whoa, I'm way over the line, okay, I need to pull it back. Like, did you
also, like, not to invoke,
you came out and just went, they made him a bully, I'm done? Come
not
on,
to invoke invoke like read the comics kind of ethics right now, like not to be like, oh well, like the source material and all that shit, but Batman is a bully. I'm sorry. It's part of his fucking personality. He's kind of a dick. I've read hundreds of comics in which he's kind of a dick. Like that's the one way in which he's kind of a bad father. He's overly controlling. He's kind of a jerk sometimes. He marginalizes the female members of his family like crazy for no good reason. He is a bully often. It's a character flaw. Like this Batman that we've built is so crazy to me because like when I look at the comics, I'm like, yeah, well, like I love Bruce and everything, but like, yeah, no, like I love Bruce in a way where like, I also love, my father, but my father's also kind of a dick. Like you can, like you have to be able to like, say like, well,
you acknowledge their flaws.
And also, can I say that like the movie is, the movie is called Batman v Superman, not Batman Gets Along with Superman. So there has to be some amount of conflict there.
I just like, of course it was, and also like if we're saying like Batman and Superman had a fight, of course it's going to be Batman being a jerk because Superman's not. Like, I'm sorry, but that's like, I don't even think that's a wide interpretation of the text. I think it's just text. The text is that if Batman and Superman are having a fight, even Frank Miller thinks so. If Batman and Superman are having a fight, it's because Batman instigated it, and Batman is usually pretty wrong. Like Miller has a hard time embracing this idea, but he can't even get around it in The Dark Knight Returns because, like, at a certain point, he textually acknowledges that Clark is a good person, and that's the reason that Batman's going to win, is because Clark is a good person, and that's the thing. Like, you can sanitize Batman as much as you want to sell him to your little boys, and to make him like the hero and everything, but at a certain point you have to admit that like he's ultimately a very flawed character who often needs to be put in check, and there's nothing wrong with that. And that part of loving Batman is understanding that occasionally he's going to disappoint you beyond measure, and that relationship with Batman is complicated, and it's hard because like I can see adults coming into that and being like, well, my child loves Batman and I want Batman to be a good role model. But it's like those things are incompatible. Like, I don't know what to tell you about that. Like, I think that you need to find a better role model for your child. Like, the text just doesn't support Batman being a role model. If you want to remodel him, sure. You could definitely remodel him into what he's supposed to be. But, like, consider the fact that, like, you have to remodel him in the first place. Maybe something's wrong with the way that we choose role models. Maybe something's wrong with the way that we decide who is admirable, socially speaking. Maybe this is a problem that has less to do with Batman and more to do with how we're raising our kids.
I think that's a lot of it. It's just like the dicks that always want the dangerous guy who's kind of a dick, and it's like, but
yes, and that's the thing, is that like he is kind of a dick, and he's not a very nice man, and he's a very good person, and him being not a very nice man and a good person is not incompatible, and that is the best thing to me about Batman. The best thing to me about Batman is that he's kind of, he's really shitty interpersonally. And, like, this is the thing, is that if you read a Batman comic that has anyone beside him in it, has any Bat family member in it, you will have someone textually acknowledge that Batman is really bad at life and people and his family and interactions. He's really bad at all of these things. I mean, like, ask Dick about him any day of the week, and Dick will be like, yeah, Bruce is like kind of not a great dad, but I love him. And it's what's interesting about him. And if you take that away, then you just have Bruce Willis. The Bruce Willis of superheroes, who could do everything, and single-handedly takes down terrorists in a building. Yeah. Okay. I mean, I guess if that's what you want, but it's not what I want.
I don't know. I think I did not go off on the lady in Taco Bell. I was proud of me, but oh boy, did people get a lecture in the car. So, also, I think I remember texting in all caps to my stepdaughter who totally understood. She was like, I know, because the last time she was in Taco Bell, she heard people talking about Justice League. And some idiot actually had the audacity to imply that it was an actor problem, and another idiot had the audacity to imply that it was a director problem, which, it half was, but the other half wasn't. And, anyway, did not go off on people, but I agree that our viewpoints and the things that we hold dear that must happen for us to engage in them is skewed. The villain has to be good looking and have some enough gray morality that I can convince myself he's really good inside. The hero has to be a straight up hero and have no flaws and no drawbacks and nothing that makes me doubt him. And it is such a limited view that it really just makes me want to be done with superheroes, which is sad because superheroes are cool. Superheroes are wonderful. And Superman, I love him dearly, but I don't love the one that showed up in Justice League. It's just like the one that showed up at the end. I don't know who that guy was. That was not my son. And it's just like, if this is where we have trapped ourselves, then I don't really need to be a part of it. And that is just the stupidest thing to happen when we have this great golden age of superhero films and TV and all this kind of stuff happening, and in all different areas. There is enough room, I think, for different interpretations to happen and flourish, and for people to respect them as being different. For us to take a different approach, and what would happen. I mean, it's just like fanfic with like 87 people write a story, and one of them does it canon, but all the other ones are like, okay, this is an AU. What would happen if, let's go a different direction with this, and stuff like that. I feel like there's room for that, and I feel like it should be an okay thing, and yet we just cannot seem to allow that. We can't allow it to happen, because when it does, we bully it mercilessly and make up taglines about how it's doomed, and constantly bash it and make it the whipping child of all the comic book movies, and and just do it to the point that even the studio caves and gives them what they want, but they didn't really want that. And so it's just, I'm very frustrated with the state of this now. I really am.
Well, I think you bring up an interesting conversation in that, like, in these movies now, like, you're forced to sympathize with the villain, but you're not allowed to sympathize with the hero anymore. That the hero can't ever have flaws. It's the villain you have to sympathize towards. It's the villain you have to somewhat root for. Like, I understand that having a layered villain, that's perfectly fine, but why can the villain be the only one to have issues? Why does it have
exactly
to, like, it's I don't get that at all.
That's not a good view of our, that's not a good thing for our society to be going into. Danielle's right. It's dangerous. It's not healthy, really, and it really opens the door for some creepy things. It's not a smart move, but that seems to be what we're doing.
What's really kooky about it to me is that it produces so many narratives in which I get really excited if the villain is winning. And that's what's really, really bizarre to me is I have so many things that I'm watching where I'm sort of like, wow, like I really hope that this villain succeeds in conquering the planet, because at least that would be interesting. And like and if that's the person I'm identifying with, like, I don't understand why I'm not supposed to root for them. And if, like, that's what I don't understand is, like, there's a line between, like, enjoying villainy and being like, yes, absolutely, we should, I mean, I think that, the best exploration of that line lately has been Black Panther, because, like, you can agree with a lot of what Killmonger is saying. You can agree with what he's talking about, and still disagree with his methodology.
Yeah,
and
in the end, his
complexity
methods are suspect.
Is something that's missing when we're just asked to feel sorry for the villain. I mean, like, that's like comparing Black Panther, the execution of Black Panther as far as its villain goes, and the execution of The Last Jedi, which, you know, basically wants you to see Kylo Ren as a point of view character who should be pitied.
We need to talk
and it's
now
like,
that you've
what?
seen that movie, honey. We
Oh
need
my
to
gosh.
talk a lot.
I have a lot
saw
of
that you
things
saw
to
it, and I was
say.
like, oh, we could have like an 8-hour conversation. We need to have a talk about this. So,
oh my goodness. But yeah, this is the thing though, is that like treating Kylo Ren as a point of view, you know, a sympathetic character all of a sudden, and then the film essentially becomes villainless.
Yes.
And then what are you doing? Who are you fighting against if Kylo is not the problem?
Apparently,
you know, like that's the thing, is that like we're fighting ideology, but we have to admit that ideology doesn't come out of nowhere. Ideology isn't a thing. You're fighting people. You just are. And if you can't admit that what you're fighting is other people, then you can't get anywhere. If you're not willing to punch the Nazis, then you're not making any progress. If you're just being like, oh, well, we need to sit down with the Nazis and change their minds, I, like, don't buy that. Like, here's the thing, like, you don't casually arrive at we should exterminate an entire group of people. You don't casually arrive there. It's not, like, a flaw in your logic. Like that's not a thing. You're not going to be able to argue a Nazi out of being a Nazi because it's not an ideology, it's a belief system. You can't defeat a belief system because it comes out of nowhere. You know, it comes out of emotions. And that idea that we're just going to fight the ideology of fascism. We're going to, you know, defeat the you know, the symbol of the First Order. No, we're going to kill a lot of people in the First Order, and if you're not cool with that, reevaluate why you like Star Wars so much, because that's what we did in all the other movies. We killed a lot of people. I'm sorry, but like the idea that we can't anymore, the idea that we cannot, like, you know, we have to be like, well, how are we gonna fix this problem with Kylo? I'm like, oh, actually, Rhea and I have a few ideas. They all include slaughtering Kylo Ren. I don't know what to tell you.
I don't know. I think my favorite was that he kills his own father. Don't even address the fact that it's Han Solo.
Oh yeah, nobody wants to talk about that.
He killed his own father, and now we're all supposed to be like, oh, that poor thing. He's been so wronged. And I'm like, no, he's pretty, you know, no, he's evil, and he needs to die. So, you know, but that's just me.
Yeah, that's it's the opposite of villain decay. We've just decided that villains don't freaking exist anymore, and that we're going to just, the entire movie is going to be a stiff argument. Okay, I mean,
stiff argument. I love it.
I mean, even in a freaking Star Trek movie where usually the villain is a stiff argument and usually the main conflict is a stiff argument, they still end up blowing someone up at the end. They still definitely usually blow someone up or are forced to blow someone up. Like, we don't have... I mean, like, you know, if you want to get right down to it, Batman vs. Superman is also about a very tense argument. It's a tense argument that involves a lot of throwing of punches and stabbing. And, you know, dropping people and dragging, and you know, there's a lot of violence involved in that large argument. There's a lot of things. I can go through point by point.
Your fist rings like a bell. That's still one of my favorite freaking parts ever.
I think if The Last Jedi wasn't Disney, Kylo would kill his mother also.
Yeah.
And most likely would have been killed by Rey in the end. But it's Disney, and everything should be semi-happy, even with the villain. So...
No.
Oh, there's so I can't even. I can't.
There's so many things we can talk forever,
if I scratch the surface of The Last Jedi, this will become a Star Wars. This will become a Star Wars podcast.
To watch this movie because I
mean, hey, if you guys want us to do a Star Wars podcast, let us know.
want us to have a Last Jedi bashing podcast, then like they need to know what they're in for.
Okay. Also, I want to say I didn't hate The Last Jedi. Well, the more I think about the main things I don't like were just the. Okay. I'm gonna end. Okay, actually, we'll end this part of the conversation soon. But I just want to at least say this about The Last Jedi.
Sorry.
I liked what they did in terms of Luke's journey and Rey's relationship with Luke, and I liked Poe's larger role in the film. But the more I think about the Rey and Kylo stuff, the whole casino planet stuff, and you're right. Even as someone who I really enjoyed the movie the first time I saw it, the lack of we're just gonna moving straight on from Han's death and now we're talking about it, and now it's Luke doesn't get the second to grieve, Leia doesn't get the second to grieve, no one really gets the second to grieve. It's just so, and again I don't, it sucks because my least favorite parts of the movie a lot of that comes from this casino planet. And I feel so bad for Kelly Marie Tran because I know none of it is her fault, and not that I hate her character or anything, but
no, it's not her fault, but
that whole her, I feel bad because they put her in a really shitty part of the story.
Well, Rian actually said, and this is the thing, I went searching for answers after I saw this movie because I really wanted to understand what the hell happened. But Rian actually said that he designed this character to be a character who didn't fit into the universe. And that's so unfair to Kelly because she's basically in the wrong movie then. They're like, hey, the best way that you could treat this role would be to do all the things that feel wrong. And that's the thing, is that he literally has come out and said the best thing that I can do for my actors is to have them do things that feel wrong in the moment. And I was like, you're a terrible director. That's just, I don't have another answer for you. That sounds like a terrible director to me. That sounds like a director who's not paying any attention to the jobs that the actors are doing. You're just basically being like, well, what I say goes, and it really makes me happy to make you super uncomfortable. Okay, wow. Shit, dude. I disagree with the way he went about it at a basic level. And I think that, there's a lot of philosophical problems with The Last Jedi that, I think were the deal breaker for me. Because, the movie can be awkward, the movie can be weird, the movie can be a little embarrassing. I don't have any problem with movies that I don't enjoy. I don't have any problem with movies that I think are not well executed. I don't necessarily align myself against bad movies. It's not a thing that I'm interested in. But morally problematic movies are different. And I think that The Last Jedi deserves to be spoken about in that way because it is morally problematic. But, if I go into that, then I have a whole other set of arguments.
They have the time to show that Luke drinks some ugly blue milk, but have no time to show him being informed that Han Solo died and show some emotion.
Right.
It's about priorities there.
The choices made were very odd in a lot of ways, and I was very confused by it. Some of the cinematography, though, I will say, was absolutely gorgeous. I never had a problem with that. Some of them were really beautiful shots, and the salt planet, that's cool. I was totally good with that. That was neat. What a great effect to have it be salt, but it turns red, so you still get the idea of blood and stuff, but not the actual thing. Not to mention a planet full of salt pretty much states my mental being at all times, and so that's but there were some good things. It's just that so much of it was, what in the heck are you doing? And I felt like there was a radical disconnect from a lot of the characters between one to the next, and that was my biggest problem.
I think what's interesting about The Last Jedi, and I think I can kind of bring this back to our actual conversation.
Yes, please do.
I think what's interesting about The Last Jedi is the way in which it's one of those films where if you think about it for too long, it falls apart.
Yeah.
And I think that that's what's interesting about it, is like if you just sit there and expect the movie to entertain you, I think The Last Jedi delivers.
Yeah,
and I think it delivers in interesting ways, and it's very enjoyable for your eyeballs. It's fun to watch. There are a lot of things about it, but the thing is that like everything about it is kind of like a cardboard set, where like you walk onto the set, you open the door, and you don't find a saloon inside, and there's nothing, because it's all surface. And that's the thing I think that makes everyone so angry about Snyder coming out and saying, hey, there's like not just like, you know, surface metaphor, there's like metaphor underneath the surface, and there's 10 layers under that. That really upsets people lately, and I think that that's one of the things that gets so hard rejected about Batman versus Superman. And I think it's one of the reasons that people are so angry at Zack this week, because he just sort of rolled out and was like, hey, like, you know, yeah, I put that there. And everyone was like, how dare you? And that's like literally, people literally reacted with how dare you to the idea that he sort of like built a complex universe. And I do think that The Last Jedi is a reflection of that attitude. I think The Last Jedi really pleased a lot of critics because it did exactly what it paid lip service. It was a lot of lip service. It gave, it gave lip service to diversity. It gave lip service to you know, the resistance as it is on Twitter. Like it gave lip service to a lot of political ideology that's really well embraced by mainstream liberals. It did all of those surface things, but once you start thinking about The Last Jedi, it starts to come apart. Everything starts to sort of dissolve. But that's the thing, is that people are angry about the idea that they might have to come back and think about these films. And I wonder if that's not like I think Disney made to order this film. I think this film is like most of Disney's other films right now, which is that like they basically put in an order, and then the director makes the film that Disney ordered, and Disney ordered a film that would melt over time, a film that would, you know, come apart. And Zack's films won't come apart. Like, for better or worse, if you disagree with the politics that are in Zack's films, they're not going anywhere. No. There's no, you know, there's no being like, oh, well, it's just a film, nobody cares anyway. You know, and that's the thing that I think keeps people coming back.
Yeah, maybe that's why they still keep coming back to hate it, is because it still keeps standing and not going anywhere and not changing, not melting. And also, so Disney is McDonald's now, is what you're telling me. Okay.
Yeah, basically.
I can believe it.
I mean, that's the I've been so angry with them since I watched The Last Jedi, because it just felt to me like it wasn't even like the problem with the Star Wars franchise, because I think the Star Wars franchise can recover from this kind of hollowing out. I think the Star Wars franchise is bigger than Disney, and bigger than Rian, and bigger than all of that. I think that it's fine. I've never worried about the Star Wars franchise. It's one of the most healthy franchises in the entire in the entire pop cultural universe of our country. Like that's it. Like Star Wars, it invented fandom. Yeah, but I think that The Last Jedi reflects so much of like Disney's made-to-order sort of mentality, and the way that they sort of let test audiences make the film that they want. And I think that's a huge problem with Disney across the board, and I think that it hurts film. And that's what's upsetting about it to me. Not necessarily that Disney's putting out a bunch of really shitty films because they listen too much to the wrong people, but that it's hurting film. And that it involves, you know, it's like McDonald's. It's lowering the culinary standard of an entire generation. Yeah. It's saying like, here's where the bar is for a hamburger. You know,
and
this is what a hamburger is supposed to taste like.
For a while now, because people still keep trying to take out the DCEU movies and hold them up against the so-called Marvel measuring stick and show how they don't measure up. And it's like, that's not the only way to make a comic book film, guys. It's not.
Well, if you want to take prime rib and compare it to a McDonald's hamburger and say, why doesn't it taste like a McDonald's hamburger, you're going to be disappointed. But
we're going to say because it wasn't made to be one, fool.
You also shouldn't eat too many McDonald's hamburgers in a row. You shouldn't eat too many prime ribs in a row either. But, like, variety is the spice of life, you guys, like, in a very literal way.
Yeah.
You know, being able to watch both sides of that fence, being able to say, like, that's the thing, and that's the thing. I went off on Twitter this weekend because I got really pissed because somebody came for Legends of Tomorrow, and I will kick you out a window over Legends of Tomorrow. I am not kidding around about Legends of Tomorrow. But somebody came for LOT, and I was pissed. And it's very hypocritical, I think, for the DCEU fandom. And I'm going to say this, and I hope that people who have done this before are listening, quite honestly, because I think it needs to be said. It's very hypocritical for people from the DCEU fandom to bag on the CW for doing what the CW does, because there is room for both approaches. There is room for silly shit for little kids, and there is room for somber shit for adults. There is room for both approaches, and both approaches are totally valid ways to adapt comic books. And the idea that Legends of Tomorrow should be tossed out with the trash because it knows what it is. Basically, because it knows it's a silly show with D-list heroes doing really silly shit, and basically embracing some really well-worn tropes and doing them well, and doing the job that it was meant to do very effectively. You know, you can have individual issues with the show, but you cannot criticize it for what it's not. Because that makes you hypocritical. Because we can't come from a corner of saying, please don't try to make the DCU the MCU, and then turn around and say, why isn't the CW the DCU? It's not, and that's the point.
We don't expect it to be. You just have to decide whether or not it's your flavor or not, and if it's not,
your flavor, who cares?
So I don't care. You know, that's the problem.
But I think that my ability to enjoy both is very healthy for me on a personal level. I think my ability to enjoy both, my ability to sit down and giggle for an hour watching Legends of Tomorrow and just watching, you know, characters be silly. I mean, like, it's that. It's the
so you just want to sit down,
I love him,
get
but
the lightness, just giggle, you know, and
silly.
And not overthink it at all.
And the idea that that's incompatible with the comics is so wrong-headed, because one of the comics that I'm ongoing reading right now is JLA from the mid-90s, and JLA from the mid-90s is fucking bonkers. It's the craziest crap I've ever read in my entire life. Every single time I read it, I'm like, what is happening? For like half the comic, I really honestly don't know. Sometimes reality just comes apart in that comic for no reason. And it's fun, and it's silly, and most of the characters are slight parodies of themselves, and there's a lot of Batman heroically saving his damsel boyfriend, Superman, and it's all very cute, and everything about it is wonderful. And it's absolutely an approach that you can take to comic books. And the idea that it's not, the idea that you have to have everything be super serious all the time is, I think, just as wrong-headed as the idea that everything has to be a joke. I think
there is room for the multiple interpretations. We just need to
and the stuff in between.
Well, I think a lot of the flack for the Legend of Tomorrow gets because it's grouped in with all the problems that all the other CW shows have had.
Which I think this is the thing that I've been arguing that is totally off topic. I understand that, but the reason that I think Legends of Tomorrow is faring better and does a better job and is more consistently enjoyable is because Legends of Tomorrow knows what it is and doesn't try to be anything else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and The Flash consistently tries to be something else. Arrow consistently tries to be Batman. Yeah. We know this. Like this is a widely addressed concern about Arrow, is that Arrow is not the story of Green Arrow. It's the story of Batman. And it just tries to be something it's not, and the fact that those shows fail in that way, I think is a direct result of them just not being like, well, what if Grodd just terrorized us for a couple episodes in a row? Like, how silly would that be? Would it be fun? Yes. Were the King Shark episodes a riot? Absolutely they were. Like, I don't know what's wrong with you. I'm sorry that the CG was not like $1 million CG.
I thought it was pretty good.
I don't care. Like, I don't need to believe that a man is half shark in order to enjoy this. Like, I don't have to be like, wow, God, I'm so glad they got an actual half shark to play this role. Like, no, I don't need to believe. That's the thing. It's like I don't need that. And the repetitiveness of the Flash, I really do believe, is a result of them trying their damnedest to take the subject matter too seriously. And the most beautiful thing about Barry is his weird, quirky relationship with his villains. And I really wish that they would lean into that. That's all.
Well, that's why I think part of that problem with the Flash, and I know we're off topic again, but it's the DC Famous podcast, whatever.
We apologize.
This is our bread and butter, guys. But like one of the things I think is really lacking about the Flash is because like in the comics, his villains are the Rogues, and like the Rogues are just ridiculous villains. But at the end of the day, they're not like murder, like they're not like super serious villains. Like they know exactly what they are. They know they're ridiculous villains. They're there just to piss the Flash off. That's all they do, and they know that. And at the end of the day, the Flash isn't gonna kill them. And at the end of the day, they're not gonna kill Flash because they like playing with the Flash too much. And it's ridiculous, but that's fine. But the Flash never leads into that. It's like, okay, we need to make this one villain super serious. Okay, no, you don't. There have been so many episodes where they just don't give a shit, and they have the dumbest villains, and they still try to make it super serious. It's like, you guys have done stupid episodes in the past. Just lean into that. Legends of Tomorrow doesn't. It's other than Black Lightning, it's the best show on the CW. Like, it's just I don't get why they did. I know it's easy to want to lean into the serious because that's how you would get some more people into the show, and it makes for better storytelling some of the time. But the writers of these shows, beyond Arrow season 1 and 2, haven't, and even in like Flash season 1, have had a hard time in the last few years of doing serious well. And the thing is, they keep going back and forth because they don't know whether they want to be serious or to be silly like Legends of Tomorrow. With Legends of Tomorrow, they pretty much have been silly from day one. And yes, they're like in season 1, it's probably the weakest season of the show, and they've had weak episodes here and there. But it still has been from day one a ridiculous, stupid show. But it's fun and ridiculous. But it's fun at the end of the day, and it's entertaining. With Flash and Arrow and Supergirl, they could and some of their just really contrived storylines of like things that like aren't going anywhere. It's just, I don't know. And also, I think Legend of Tomorrow also benefits from having a shorter season because that means a lot less filler and a lot less dumb episodes. And
I will say that.
And I think well, same thing's going with Black Lightning for it being a mid-season show. The shows benefit better, and I know Black Lightning more than likely is going to have 22 episodes next season or whatever, which I think is a mistake. The shows when you know exactly how many episodes you have, and you're not dragging the entire story out for like a full year, it fares better. Like Legend of Tomorrow, I think fares better because it has more I think season 2 of Legend of Tomorrow was so much fun. Legion of Doom, they were fun, and they made one of my least favorite villains on Arrow, which is Malcolm Merlin, a good character to me again. And I thought they were going to be able to do that because Arrow, I thought, ruined the character. And they brought in the
Arrow murdered Merlin, and it was so sad because John Barrowman is a sweet, wonderful man.
He is. I love this character. And then Arrow season 4 ruined a lot of characters for me. But,
it was a mess.
Yeah, Arrow season 4 was kind of the death of everything.
I was seriously at the point of
like when they announced he's gonna do and Malcolm Merlin coming back, I'm like, God, no, please fucking no. But then, and also when
I've never been unhappy in my life to see John Barrowman, and that was like, Arrow shouldn't have given me that feeling. That was terrible.
Mm-hmm. And also, I didn't like what they did with Damien Dark in season 4 of Arrow at all. I didn't think he was that good of a villain. However,
I wasn't that confused. Yeah.
Well, I think it was a matter of fit. Because once Damien Dark moved from Arrow to Legend of Tomorrow, he was a perfect fit. His over-the-top attitude and Neil McDonough was a perfect fit for Legend of Tomorrow. And I think that's why they brought him back as one of the main villains of this season. And I think that was one of the best decisions that anyone in the DCEU universe has ever done, was bringing in these characters who, like... I think it's funny because like, they took in Reverse Flash, too. Was a character who, like... I was a little worried of them doing again, because like, okay, we've done the speedster villain thing so many times in Reverse Flash. Also, he really shouldn't exist in the first place, because it makes no sense, because they killed off Eddie, so that should have killed him off.
My gosh,
but in Legend of Tomorrow, they finally made it into a way where, like, okay, he is a time remnant who's trying to outrun the Black Flash because he's not supposed to exist. So he's outrunning the fact that he's not supposed to exist. But okay.
Yeah.
But that problem shouldn't have been fixed on the other show. That should have been resolved, or at least brought up in The Flash.
Yes.
In The Flash, they're like, oh wait, why is he back? Time travel's complicated. What?
Oh my gosh.
And that's so lazy. But then Legend of Tomorrow can sometimes make sense, but it's just, yeah. So that's
the thing too, is that Legends of Tomorrow is absolutely bonkers, but you never see them take the easy way out. Mm-hmm. That's the thing. Like there's like great swaths of Legends of Tomorrow, very close to not making any sense at all, and everything is a little bit like, I mean, like there's timey-wimey content happening where you're kind of like, I'm not sure that's actually how, I don't know if that actually worked. But, like, you can forgive Legends of Tomorrow its flaws because there's no conceit that they're doing anything bigger than that. And that's the thing, is that, like, I think Arrow and Flash are so focused on elevating their content into something that it's not. Like, why not just have fun? Why not just show your audience a good time? Like, I just feel like, they could lean into what they're good at. Like, they have so many great episodes, but like the great episodes of The Flash, like, are really emotional episodes and really silly episodes. And those are the two things that I think The Flash excels at. I love their cast of characters. I love the Wests. I love Cisco. I love everybody who's a supporting character in that. And I wish they'd give me a chance to love Barry. But they keep putting all this stuff on top of it, and they keep saying, like, it seems like every single time they go to the drawing board with Flash, they go, how can this be more like Arrow? Mm-hmm. And the last thing that I want is the Arrowification of any CW show. Mm-hmm. That's the last thing I want. So, I mean, like, it's possible it's not for me, but it also feels like I'm just very frustrated because I've seen so much good come out of The Flash, and it's a fandom I want to be a part of. And it's silly for them not to lean into what's good and strong about that series. I mean, like, there's nothing wrong with what Legends of Tomorrow is doing. And I think that everybody seems to be afraid of being Legends of Tomorrow, but it's not like the series is going anywhere. Like,
I know they're gonna get renewed.
It's fine.
I am going to say the crossover wasn't one of my favorites, but when Mick Rory found out that in another world he died saving police officers from a fire, I about lost it. I mean, just the look on his face, he was like, I died saving pigs, and even now, I laughed so hard.
And also,
like, that was a thing of beauty.
The funny thing about Legends of Tomorrow too is that they can bring back Captain Cold and have him be gay, and have this like weird sexual tension now between him and Heatwave. But it's like, that's
okay. I did just giggle when Mick, like, rubbed his eyes, and he's like, that's okay, let it out, big guy. And he's like, I'm not crying.
Like, I think, like, again, I think Legend of Tomorrow even when it does things that kind of annoy me, at the end of the day, it's not nearly as offensive or annoying or bad as any of the any of the other Arrowverse shows. Like, it's like Supergirl. Like last season alone, made me just as angry as I was from seasons 3 and 4 of Arrow.
Yeah.
Like what they did with fucking Mon-El, who's a character I was curious to see how they would tackle in live action and in the show, turn him into slave owner poster white boy, and they threw away the interracial romance of the lead characters to have this fucking asshole come in, and it's I can rant about the CW show. I can rant about the other CW shows all day. I just want to let you know that we're supportive of Legends of Tomorrow. That's our main point. Go watch Legends of Tomorrow if you want actually good CW shows. Black Lightning and Legends.
That's the thing. I was just like, I think that we can't turn around and denigrate those shows for being what they are, and I think that's a huge problem. Just this idea that everything needs to be one thing, and that's the only thing. It's like I'm just arguing for like a varied diet. I think that the ability to enjoy Legends of Tomorrow, the ability to enjoy two different kinds of approach to comic book heroes is really healthy, not just for from a personal perspective, but also like for the genre. The genre needs that needs variety in order to keep alive. And if we're talking about, I bring it up a lot, but superhero fatigue is going to happen if everything starts being exactly the same. If there's no forward movement. Yeah, that's the thing, is that like if superhero fatigue is going to set in, it's going to set in the near future because we started, messing around with things like what Fox is doing, like coming in and sort of meddling with the New Mutants and meddling with the different approaches and the way that those things are being approached. And what Warner Brothers did with Justice League, in a way, is a foregone conclusion because it's exactly what all the studios are doing with their superhero content right now, and it's strangling the genre. And I think that if you care about these films getting made, and if this is something that you love and support, then I think you have to support from all directions. You have to say, well, that's not my cup of tea, but I'm glad it exists because it's good for the genre to have, tension. It's good for the genre to have a lot of different stuff happening inside of it. And I think that it's a shame for anyone to be like, well, this is, this approach is the wrong approach, and the only right approach is the approach that I'm taking.
Yeah. It's honestly, it's very stressful because, even, this is just me, and not the whole world and stuff, but, the moment Guardians of the Galaxy came out and Marvel went, holy crap, they want funny, they have started making sure that all of their stuff is along that similar vein. And it has made the films so much alike that I have now officially superhero fatigue coming from Marvel, simply because it's like, well, I don't really know why I bother paying money to go see it again when it's just the same film. Black Panther is exempt from this. But, and so if everybody wants it all the same, we have this weird mentality of it's got to be us versus them, and mine has to be better than yours, and all that kind of stuff. If we don't support from all directions, I like that phrase, Danielle, thank you, we're going to funnel everything into all the same, which is exactly what's happening. And that is the fastest way to burn people out and to kill it. That will be the death of this superhero golden age that we're in if we just insist on doing this. And I don't know how to stop the flood because people just seem to be so naturally ready to do this. They want to do this. I don't know how to stop it, but it will be what kills this. And it's sad too, because we have such great potential, such amazing things we could do, such varied and different things of beauty that we could be enjoying, and instead we're arguing about which is best and trying to funnel everything down to, well, was it fun or not? I'm not against fun. I really hate that has become the measuring stick for all of it now. Is it fun? Because if it's not fun, if it's not funny, I'm not interested. It's like, well, you are, it can't be all one. It cannot. I love fun, There's nothing wrong with fun. Funny is hilarious to me, but in the right moment when I want it, like Legends of Tomorrow or something like that, not in every single thing that I watch. And so please stop holding that up against everything else and going, well, is it fun? I don't care if it's fun. We have lost the ability as I don't want to say reviewers and I don't want to say critics, as basic audience members, we have lost the ability to look at something that has been put out there and say, okay, personal feelings aside, did this set out to achieve what it wanted to do? And this is what we need to ask ourselves when we watch a movie, read a book, watch a TV show, or stuff like that. It had ambition to be this. Did it achieve that? And that really needs to be the measuring stick that we put something up against, and stop picking up the other one and battering things with it because it's not the same. That's not what matters. Zack wanted to put Superman in a real world and show what would happen if he came to our world. Did he achieve that? I think he did. Guardians of the Galaxy, the first one, I deeply love that film, guys. And, I'm like, sure, you'll kick me off here right now. But I deeply love that one because in the end, it was so subversive because what people thought it was going to be was this adventure movie with a little bit of comedy. They purposely did it as a comedy movie with a little bit of adventure. It was hilarious. It was so funny. It kept subverting the tropes.
Guardians of the Galaxy, though, is that everything afterward had to be Guardians of the Galaxy.
Exactly, and that's my beef too, because that right there was a shining moment in time. It was a thing of beauty, where we're all expecting these great adventure heroes, and instead we get like when they're preparing for the final battle, and you got this boss soundtrack in the back, and they're all coming out, they're planning, and everything's cool, and they do the slow motion hero walk. Every single one of them is like, what, Rocket's scratching his crotch, I think Gamora's yawning, I cannot remember what Peter's doing, but they're screwing it up because it's like, look, we're awesome heroes. No, we're not. We're totally comedic dorks, and it was perfect. That's why the dance-off worked for me. That was friggin' hilarious, especially when he's like, Gamora, come on in. She's like, and he goes, okay, so take it back. That's hilarious because of what it came out as. The only problem was the moment it was successful, Marvel went, ooh, okay, now we know what box to check. And now they've applied it to everything else, and it's like, no, you've just defeated the entire purpose. That's not what that was supposed to be. When Peter saves Gamora, and then she asks him what happened, and he's like, I saw you out there, and it's that wonderful, beautiful moment of just a second. He's like, I saw you out there, and I just couldn't let you die. And then he ruins it by going on with, I don't know, just something rose inside me, and I was just, and she does an audible sigh, and thumps her head on the ground, on the floor, and goes, where's the orb? The moment was completely ruined. It was beautiful. The comic timing of that is hilarious, guys. Like not everybody can do comedy, and that was well done. But the moment we took that and went, cool, now we know what we can force everything else into and make it all the same, is when Marvel Death happened for me. And so this is what we're going to end up with if it doesn't stop. I'm just reiterating what Danielle said, but you said it so well, I had to add mine too. Okay, I'm done now.
And what hurts even the most is that when movie like Thor Ragnarok comes out, it immediately is called as the best Thor movie. Like, Marvel finally did him right, and I'm just like, what?
Oh my god.
Oh, no.
Well, honestly, that's every single fucking Marvel movie. They're like, this one is the best. No, this one is the best. No, guys, listen. This one is the best.
Well, what we're looking at
is the best. Just go ahead and And
this is the thing, though, is what we're looking at is the conversation around the MCU fandom degrading, because that's the problem, is that like we can only have conversations like in that term. Like we can just be like, oh yeah, that was the best, this movie's so good. Like, how is it good? You start interrogating those people, they really, like, all they can talk about is their personal enjoyment of the film. Like, okay, that's definitely a valid level on which to enjoy a film, but once you start picking at it, you're going to find that it falls apart, and you know that because otherwise you would start picking at it, because that's fandom. Fandom is about analysis. Fandom is about picking things apart. Fandom is about, nitpicking things and trying to imagine alternate universes and trying to figure out the metaphysics of, how Stephen Strange does, sorcery and all that shit. Like, that's the kind of stuff that's fandom's bread and butter. And the fact that has fallen off sharply in the MCU is such a statement about the quality of the films. And that's what hurts me most of all, is because the MCU fandom used to be one of the best fandoms I've ever been a part of. It used to be the coolest goddamn place to be. It used to be pages and pages of meta about Black Widow's hypothetical backstory, or what Steve would have actually eaten in 1941, or what kind of, actual historical research.
Because he was in the army, so yeah,
all that stuff. Like, those conversations got deeper and deeper, and they plumbed the depths of these movies, and they really asked hard questions. And what you have now is a fandom where the only people who are left are the people who are like, no, like, this is the best Marvel movie that's ever happened. This one's the best. It's just like, this is an argument about, like, which Marvel movie is king of the mountain right now, and then forgetting basically anything that came before it. I mean, that's what Ragnarok did, was wipe everything out. And that's what Ragnarok did, is it basically just wiped out everything that came before it, and that's what MCU fans wanted out of that film. What they wanted was an apology for two films that were some of my favorite superhero films that have ever happened. I don't want an apology for that. I want you to build on what's there, what was good about it. There were flaws in the Dark World, to be sure, but you could either build on that. You can either build on what was great about the Dark World, or you can say, oh, well, that's too hard, reboot. And that's that's what Ragnarok felt like. I mean, sure, you can apologize to the people who didn't like your movie, for example, Warner Brothers, or you can look at the things that were great about that film and augment them. And one of those approaches is positive, and one of those approaches leaves you with the lowest box office in the history of the DCEU. Congratulations.
They so earned that. Congratulations, that's true. It's like, look what you did. Look what you did. Are you happy now? Did you learn your lesson? Did ya? Come on.
What's funny? Anyways. I know this is like a more Marvel talk, but whatever. But I want to say this, Avengers: Age of Ultron was the last time you can talk openly about the problems of an MCU film. To me, that was the last time you could be like, this movie had a lot of shitty things in it, and a lot of people were like, okay, yeah, we all agree. And then Civil War came out, and then everything's like, no, the MCU is perfect, it's the DCEU that's awful. And then,
and that's the thing, is that the existence of the DCEU has really hurt the MCU in that specific way.
Yeah.
It's frustrating, because, I used to want to be able to have these open conversations with people, but you can't, because then you're going to be like, oh, well, you're a DCEU fan, so why am I supposed to take your opinion seriously?
Yeah. Well, and sure enough, okay, see, let's get back onto, DCEU, since we're supposed to. Seriously, guys, can I just say how awesome it was to celebrate a 2-year anniversary of a film? That never happens. And yet, BvS's anniversary came around, and everybody's like, woo! And it was, because I've curated my feed so carefully, it was such a wonderful, exciting, positive thing that I was just so delighted by, to see everybody go, you know what? I love this film, and 2 years later, I still love it. And look at, all the groundbreaking awesomeness it did and all these different things. And look at how awesome this movie is. And it was so cool that it actually trended because so many of us were excited about it. And you're right, there are those retards that had to come on and be like, oh my gosh, there are people who actually think this movie was good. And it was like, wow, you have no life and you're pathetic. But you know what?
Even bother me is the thing. The people who bother me are the people who want to frame this as like the DCEU doing something like aggressive or like
oh my gosh, really? like this to hurt you.
Yes, like that's the thing. That's the way it got framed. Is they were like, oh my gosh, like like the DC, like the DCU fans are making Batman versus Superman trend, either to like overshadow Black Panther, which is crazy. Black Panther's moment is a bubble and it's popped. It's done now. Wrinkle of Time came out. Like it's over. Like it's like when the video releases, we'll start hyping it again. But right now, like it's crazy to be like, well, the last film that came out, a couple months ago, definitely is so like it's crazy to say that we're trying to do anything but like celebrate a film, and that's the thing, is there's just a bunch of people just being like, well, like Batman vs Superman fans.
I love this movie, and it means
are so angry about nobody liking their movie that they made Batman vs Superman trend, and it's like, no, like it doesn't have to be anger in order for that to happen. Like it's just we were having fun. Like we had fun. We all had a lot of cool things to say about it. The cool thing about like it wasn't just like people being like Batman versus Superman, because there's shit in the movie, you guys. There's stuff to talk about. There were many things to be said. That's how you get a thing trending. If you don't have a lot to say, usually shit doesn't trend. That's the whole point.
Exactly. Well, that's the thing. That's why, Justice League isn't trending, and there's a reason for that. There's nothing to talk about. Like, I can't talk about how, all the problems and how much I hate it, but you're right. It's just like,
the thing is that when Justice League
there's nothing to tear apart. There's nothing to dig into. There's nothing to analyze and find cool things and stuff like that, because there's nothing there. It's just kind of a hollowed out little popcorn film. And, there's a reason for that.
And it says something too, that we were trending in like a number 8 spot, I think, at a certain point. And there's something to be said about the fact that wasn't encouraged by anyone outside of the fandom. Yep. Like we didn't need an actor from the franchise to whip that up. We didn't need any PR people from Warner Brothers to whip that up. We didn't need Zack Snyder to even say anything.
No, that was just pure passion of fans.
It was just the fandom coming together, and that's the thing, is that like when you have that kind of community, that's what happens.
Yep.
And it's not our fault, and we shouldn't be blamed for the fact that the MCU doesn't have that sense of community.
I'm certainly not going to take responsibility for that.
For the fact that other fandoms don't have that sense of community. If anything, I don't think it's our fault that we have that community. I think it's the Backlash's fault. I really feel like there's no way we could have built something as powerful around these films if critics hadn't come for them so heavily, if fans hadn't invaded all of our spaces where we were talking about this stuff. This stuff might have cooled off, but the fact that we're dragged out on a monthly basis to defend our taste in a film has created a community in which, you have to be able to summon a posse. You have to be able to summon a bunch of people to say, like, hey, this person is not listening to me. Can you repeat what I just said to them 17 times? And, that is an obnoxious tactic. And, you can call that harassment if you want to, but what it is, in a very literal sense, is someone not hearing the first time someone says something to them, and then 10 other people coming in and putting in their vote. It's like when, there was that one moment in DCU Twitter when someone said, does anybody really honestly like Batman versus Superman? And, people started just responding with hand emojis for days after this person asked this question. Just a line of freaking hand emojis. It was amazing. And, it got painted in the mainstream as, like, weird harassment when it's, like, there's literally that many people. Like, nobody was posting it multiples. Everyone was just passing around that question and responding to it in the exact same way. Like, hey, if you wanted a head count, here we are. And, like, the amount of responses that they got was what their problem was. And it's like, I don't know what to tell you about that. There's that many people.
I always, it comes down to, they seem to think that there's like two of us, and so they poke the bear because it's fun to bully two people, and then the thousands of people come back and go, dude, what are you doing? We love this too. And they go, oh, I'm such a victim, stop picking on me. And it's like, you're just a bully, that's all you are. So, yeah.
Regarding Justice League, when we were talking about how ugly the CGI was, I always think about how Henry Cavill felt when he sit in theater and saw this introduction for the very first time. Like, I just can't even imagine what kind of embarrassment that must have been for him. And what was nice to see is that he actually made fun out of this with his fresh video on Instagram where he finally shaved this thing.
Wasn't that great?
And now we are having now there are photos popping up on the internet with him having this curly hair like Superman, and his manager, I think, tweeted a photo that something is coming soon. As I understood that something is coming soon.
Yes.
Like maybe a Shazam cameo or finally Man of Steel 2 there will be talks about this, I hope. But I think that the fact that he finally shaved means that he's completely done with Mission Impossible and he is now free to continue portray Superman further in DCEU.
I sure hope so.
Yep.
And I just think it's funny, like he was so in on the joke too.
Oh my gosh, he was so funny! I swear, I love him to death. I really do.
Like his whole video, like obviously, like even if like it wasn't Henry Cavill, I probably would be standing the actor too. But I fucking love Henry as Superman so much.
Me too.
Like, what actor else? Like who else can you say that would go to such ends over the controversial mustache that he knows like people have memed? He used the fucking meme in his video. Like,
exactly. That was my favorite. I'm gonna put up the sappy "I will remember you," and then blippy goes right past it, and I was like, "Oh, you're naughty, and I love you." That when he stares at the mirror and it's like, "Yes, it's hard to believe this is not CGI."
And there was a response from Mission Impossible director that, "Hey Henry, we're going to make a reshoot tomorrow."
That was awesome, and that made me so happy. Like, he and that director always seemed to have had a great relationship on social media, at least, where they could joke around and be obnoxious and stuff. And I thought that was just so awesome because, of course, he'd come on and be like, "Dude, we're gonna do reshoots. What are you doing?" And that's just—it's nice to just see people have some fun and have a good time and not really worry about things. It's nice.
Isn't it fascinating that pretty much everyone who worked on Justice League.
Sorry, what was that? I think you cut off, Artyom.
Someone has an opportunity, like Henry Cavill with this meme picture, and Zack Snyder with his viral post of photos of deleted scenes. Like, it's nice to see that not only we are sad of what came out.
Yeah, and that's why I think it's great seeing Zack post again. Because one, he's being super bitter, which I think is earned.
Salty. I think salty's a better name.
I agree. But in a fun way, in a fun, playful way. He's not saying like, "Oh, fuck Warner Brothers." Ha 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 ha.
Yeah, he's not really nasty, but he's lovely fun right now. So.
Yeah.
I imagine like he's had to. I think Zack has had some sort of talks with Warner Brothers in terms of what he can say, because otherwise, I don't think like. I think we brought it up because like in last week on our podcast when he was first teasing all those images, like showing all of this stuff. I think either there's some sort of future with him in the DCEU, or is Warner Brothers was like, hey, you have the green light, post whatever pictures you think are necessary. It's okay, like no harm done. Which I think is probably the latter rather than the former. But it's just nice like seeing him interact with us again. Not that he wasn't, but he could talk a lot more openly about the DCEU than he was previously. Because now it's like every day there's some new bit of detail about Batman v Superman that we didn't see before. Just literally this morning, the whole like painting above or the picture above Ben's head after. Just
awesome sauce. Yeah, that's what's so weird to me about everybody sort of calling for us to like leave Zack alone. Like I understand leave Zack alone about the Snyder Cut. I understand don't talk to him about things that he doesn't have any control over. Mm-hmm. But this idea that like Snyder is gonna like move on, and that like the very idea of interacting with his fan audience was like a burden to him was so wrongheaded. And I think that it's directly reflected upon like there's clearly something has changed legally in the last couple days as far as what Zack can and cannot say in regards to this film, and I think that means his relationship with Warner Brothers has changed in one way or another, and like I think that's what it's reflective of. And the very idea that like people are just sort of like, well, like because he doesn't talk about it, it means that he's moved on and that he doesn't care and that you should stop talking to him about Batman vs Superman, just shows no understanding for his investment in the project. And I think that's how people view his level of investment. I think people view him as like a guy who was just doing a job, and I think that's not how Zack sees his relationship with these films.
Oh, he's very passionate about these things.
There's an artistic.
Part of why I love it.
Yeah, there's an artistic investment, and I think that the idea that not getting to finish Justice League didn't hurt him is silly. And I think that the people who have touted that in various places really don't have a very good read on the situation, because the situation is that like not only was he completely disrespected by the people he worked for, and sort of just the fact that they took advantage of his personal life in order to cover their tracks on this situation, and the fact that they made this situation so much more stressful and so much more painful than it needed to be is one level of it. But I think the other half of it is just that his artistic vision for this was so disrespected, and he spent the last 5 years of his life, more than that, because Man of Steel has been a thing for us for 5 years, but for him this is probably about like the last 8 years of his life. He spent the last 8 years of his life building this. He built this for them. He built an entire DCEU for them, and for them to just sort of kick him out the door without much ceremony, or without letting him finish at least the storyline that he had set up, is really, really, really harsh. And I think it's harsh from an artistic perspective too. And I think the people who are arguing otherwise really don't understand how invested he was in these films and how personal this was for him.
Yep, and I completely agree. Stop harassing him about the Snyder Cut. That's not the point, harass Warner Brothers.
It's not within his control. It's not within his control. If he was holding out on us for the Snyder Cut, I would say, leave Zack alone. Like, let him figure out what he wants to do in his own time. But it's not even a thing that he has any control over. It doesn't have. It's not about him. Like, if you want to get up every day and tweet 75 times in a row at Warner Brothers about the Snyder Cut, my gosh, like it's your time to spend. Whatever you want to do. Nobody's being hurt. The intern is rolling their eyes. But like that's it. Like that. But harassing Zack about it is just a pointless exercise.
But I will say, I think that it did him a lot of good to see people get crazy and celebrate the 2-year anniversary of Batman v Superman, which has taken a lot of abuse for being the reason why Justice League went the way it did, and was a real project for him that he put 3 years of his life into and a lot of his passion and heart, and took a huge drubbing when it came out and everybody completely lost their minds and decided it was terrible, and so I think for him it was really a shot in the arm of awesome sauce to see people get crazy and really excited about this film 2 years later even, and talk about how much they love it. And I think in some ways that's part of what's loosened him up and helped him start talking about it, because it's like, wow, there is an audience for this that gets it, that loves it, and that wants to hear more. I can share that, and so it feels a little bit more like a safer space for him, and I'm just delighted to see that. That makes me very happy.
And you know what? It's interesting that I think Zack Snyder is kind of casually supports this Snyder Cut movement. I mean, just recently, he responded to Ray Fisher's viral post with football match, where Ray Fisher said, life doesn't always go the way we plan it. The only thing that we can do is keep reaching for what we believe. And Zack Snyder responded to that with photo of the same shot but from the other perspective, and all that believe Ray Fisher. And I don't know, maybe something is happening, but
I hope so, but I'm afraid to assume.
I think he just supports this entire movement and he doesn't mind it too much, because I think if he kind of felt like he doesn't like it, it made him feel uncomfortable, he wouldn't be posting all those photos from deleted scenes and kind of supporting what we stand for him.
Agreed.
Yeah,
absolutely. And he's a film director who's actually literally directly contacting and directly interacting with his fandom. Like it's unprecedented for him to get on Vero and just like randomly comment on people's posts and stuff.
Right?
You don't see that from most directors. And I think that lack of distance between him and the fandom really says something about like his preferred amount of interaction, which is like on his terms, but like definitely direct and definitely interpersonal, and he's fine with interacting with his fans. I mean, like he's, but the degrees of separation between myself and Zack Snyder are closing, and I'm very excited about it.
Yep, no, I totally agree. Not to mention, like most of the time, he's been people have added him with a question or commented on something, and then he'll kind of pop in and add something, and we all get excited. And now, like yesterday, I swear it was unprecedented. That was one of the first times ever. He's like, "Oh, here," and I'm also going to tell you about why it was a spear. And we're all like, "What?" Like that was his original post that he put on there. That is like, now he's really getting crazy. And then this morning with the painting, and he's like, "Here, I'll just start a post and give it to you," which is not the way he's been doing things. And so it's really exciting to see him kind of, I don't know, grow into himself or come into the welcoming space and go, yeah, this is cool. I'm so happy. It's really exciting.
Mm-hmm. And that's the crazy thing too, is that in this whole situation, like I was in the mindset of for up until like a few weeks ago, I was in the mindset of like, guys, you can tell he was exhausted from the situation. He went through a loss. Warner Brothers fucked him over. Give the guy a break. Like, he's earned his break, leave him alone. And then I would say at least almost every other day now he's posting something new, and now it's like, well, do I really want to leave him alone, or do I want to try to get him to answer him on my questions? Cause it's like, you're right, Danielle, it's really unprecedented to have a filmmaker be so active with this fan base. But also, I don't think right now there's very many other filmmakers that have such a passionate fan base like Zack does.
Yeah.
So, like I see, like, some directors, like James Gunn is pretty active on Twitter. Like, Rian Johnson is kind of active on Twitter. But I think to have a fan base that's... James Gunn, I think, maybe is the only other person to... Like, he's straight up said on Twitter, "Oh, yeah, Groot died." And everyone's like, what? So, of course, him being the director of Guardians of the Galaxy and being a big name... everyone makes a big deal whenever he posts them. But with Zack, it's like he's posting intricate details about the movie that people go on to complain about. So it's reported as, oh, see, here's this stupid thing Zack posted, rather than here's this new detail that we didn't see before with Batman v Superman. And Zack's doing that for us. He's not doing that, like, if he really was, again, so far removed from the situation, he didn't want anything to do with Warner Brothers or the DCEU anymore, he wouldn't be posting as much as he does. And I think one of my favorite things that he's posted so far, and he posted it right after we recorded our last podcast, was the image of the League at the cemetery. When they were all supposed to fucking be there. Oh
gosh!
It's just,
yes.
Like, because I've complained.
That ticked me off because it had so much more gravity to the situation. None of them looked like, "We'll just dig up Superman, yay!" You know, it was.
They
like,
look uncomfortable.
Okay, should we be doing this? Is this the right course? But we can't not. And you know, they just kind of. I don't know. It was the gravity of just even that picture was a beautiful thing.
And the way how he celebrated International Women's Day with a photo of deleted scene Lois and Martha, that was amazing.
That just made me cry. I'm like, that got it. I need that scene, man. Just give it to me. I need to see Martha and Lois talk the way Zack would have Martha and Lois talk. Please, just give me that. So yeah.
And it's that's why, like, I'm trying my best not to get too hopeful about the Snyder Cut. But Zack, he's playing with my emotions.
Hope springs eternal. I know, we can't help but it's so hard.
I mean,
I think what makes me feel better about the whole situation is that I feel like the question was settled this week. I don't know which way it was settled necessarily, but I do feel like the question has been settled, and I think that feels a lot better than it being up in the air. I don't want to spend the rest of my life being like, will there be a Snyder Cut? You know, like, I don't want to necessarily, you know, I mean, like, it would be very cool if 10 years from now it just dropped out of the sky. That would be very exciting. I would be into it. I think that would be an amazing project for smarter people to do once they take over at Warner Brothers, because inevitably smarter people will end up there.
Hopefully.
Yeah, well, like, that
10
would
years,
be really
really?
cool. Yeah, it would be really cool if 10 years from now that happened. But at the present moment, for me personally, I just want an answer. I just want to know, you know, if all this is gonna pay off, if all of this is worth the effort, if all of this digging in is a thing, or if really should we have hope for a Snyder Cut in the near future, because the Snyder Cut that's released 10 years from now really isn't going to mean as much to us at that point. Agreed. I mean, like, I'm sure all of us will, you know, rise from the grave and come stomping out onto Twitter to do the same shit we're doing right now. I believe it. I know the kind of people who are in this fandom. We are stubborn fucks.
I will be like,
all
where's
of us.
my password?
We're seriously, we're gonna be like the living embodiment of that gif of Mushu from Mulan coming up.
Yes,
I live.
Literally, this fandom is full of the most stubborn people I've ever met in my entire life. It's my people, and I know us. We will come back in 10 years if that happens. But for the time being, I just feel like everyone could settle, everyone could look toward the future, everyone could figure out how they feel about Warner Brothers' position on Justice League if we got an answer. And I think that, you know, a hard yes or no would be really, really helpful right now, even if it's a no. For me personally, I would rather have a no than a maybe for the next decade.
Yeah, I do agree. Sitting in limbo is a very difficult place to be, and I don't truly want to sit there forever. I would agree with that.
Well, so what made you think that he's gotten a definitive answer in the past week, Danielle?
I think that the main reason for his silence has been because of conversations with Warner Brothers. I think that when you're in negotiations, that's kind of what your social media presence sounds like, which is complete radio silence. You don't want to tip your hand.
There and start to, you don't want to tip your
hand. You don't want to upset anybody in the situation. You don't want anybody.
To get up, in the people who want it, so you just don't engage and you sit on your hands and you wait, for,
Yep.
That's exactly
And he's not been able to say anything. And I think if he got a definite no, he could do whatever he wants now because he doesn't work for them anymore. Yeah. And if he got a definite yes, they would expect him to, be allowed to increase his presence on social media in order to promote whatever it is they're putting out. Mm-hmm. Both of those things, I think, are equally likely. I think it's kind of up in the air. I think that they would be foolish from my perspective, I think they would be foolish to not take all of our money. I think that's crazy.
We were desperate to throw it at them. I mean, come on.
Yeah, I think it's outrageous to have a bunch of nerds waving dollar bills at you and to be like, oh no, thank you. There's no price on our dignity. Obviously, there's a price on your dignity, you guys. Come on, you released Justice League. I saw it.
Yeah.
The dollar signs in your eyes give you away. So, I think it's equally likely. I think it's 50-50 at this point. I think most people don't believe that it's 50-50, but I do think it's 50-50. I think it's equally likely that they said, absolutely, yeah, let us pay you what you're asking, which is probably less than he's worth, to finish this film. He doesn't even need actors to do that. He just all he needs is the FX studio.
Yep.
He just needs to finish the special effects.
Yep, and I totally agree that
and Junkie, he needs to pay Junkie for the work he's already done, and that's basically all it is. All they need to do is just cut Junkie a check, because it seems like that was finished. That stuff's done in the can.
Yep.
So,
Agreed. And
I think it's 50-50.
Yeah.
And
I was going to say, never mind. Hi, Rebecca.
Oh, hi. Yeah.
I was like, did Rebecca
Welcome
leave?
back.
What happened?
I don't announce that I'm leaving because you guys are talking, so I just figured I'd just
true.
leave.
We're always talking. It's impossible.
Well, thank you for coming back.
Glad you're back.
Yeah, thanks. What are you guys talking about?
Justice League.
The
possibility of a Snyder Cut, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you spend a little too much time on Star Wars and Legends of Tomorrow, but it is what it is.
Sorry.
It's a larger part. It's a larger part of the metacritical conversation. It's the atmosphere in which Justice League is happening. So I don't think that it's it's not that far off.
Yeah.
We get back to it.
I can see that.
I just think it's funny because
I agree that Zach's level of interaction with the fans now it seems like something has shifted somewhere. I completely agree with that, Danielle. Something is different because before he was so very, very quiet, and now he's talking, and I don't know. It just feels like something has happened differently.
And again,
maybe we're wrong. Maybe it's just seasonal
depression. I felt that same way too. I just desperately want to believe it. So I need my boy to come back because I still haven't got him. So,
And again, we have this. Ray Fisher, it was the first time he posted anything about Justice League, as I recall. And it is another shot of a deleted scene. Maybe something is happening. I pray. I got all of my fingers crossed for Snyder Cut, but
yeah.
I'm definitely hopeful. Again, I'm of two minds. I think it is 50-50 even to me because it's just because the one part of me
scared to get the hopes up. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
don't want to get hurt again.
I'm really scared to get my hopes up because especially because I keep anytime I go to Walmart or Best Buy or whatever, I keep walking by the aisle and I keep seeing Justice League there on that shelf, and I'm just like, no.
I had the same reaction yesterday because my college has a movie night thing, and they are showing Justice crap, and I saw a poster and I literally cringed, like physically, in like my mind and my body. I just, and I couldn't even look at it because I was just like, I don't want to see that.
Yep. Well, that's funny. Like for me, because like I'm one of the very few people who actually who bought the movie digitally right when it came out. But one of the most frustrating things is that I have this ugly ass Photoshop poster when they have all of these amazing posters that they've used for months and months and months, and they use this Photoshopped crap, and it looks so ugly next to like even Batman v Superman. It's like the Ultimate Edition is just the Trinity standing there, and it's a lot more beautiful than what the fucking this Photoshop messes of people, just like Batman floating above everyone, and then just everyone in awkward. It's just so photoshopped and fake. Like
it's like they deliberately didn't want to make anything about this film good. Like I don't know what their problem is.
Yep.
I don't know. I don't know.
So that's what I think I was gonna say a long, long time ago. Sorry, Danielle, when you were talking about things changing. I totally agree that I think very much, and we've all been of this mind, that Warner Brothers is doing their best to squeeze as much as they can to milk this Justice League for as much money as they can get before they take our money for a Zack version. Because, you know, in the end, they are all about the money. So, which is why I've been patiently waiting for the video, you know, the DVD to come out, for that to kind of blow over and stuff, to kind of see where we lie after that and see what they might tell us after that. Because I don't think they're going to say a word until they've squeezed every last dime out of this one.
I mean, that's common practice.
It is.
There's a reason that special editions come out half a year after the official editions of films. Like, it's not because, you know, they spent so much time working on it. No, there's like, you know, there's a thought process to it, and they're like, well, we want to give everybody 6 months to buy the version so that they can be part of that conversation, and then, you know, 6 months later we can have $20 more, 20 to 50.
Yeah.
You know, like, it's the same reason that I own, you know, all the Harry Potter books in paperback and in that hardcover box set. Because I'm a fool.
Can't help it.
And that's why for me, like, ever since I got, like, a PS3 a couple years ago, like, I've been converting all of my old DVDs to Blu-rays now. So now I have, like several copies of, like, certain movies just because I wanted to get the Blu-ray version.
Yep.
So now I have, like, well, unintentionally, I have, like, 2 versions of Suicide Squad, 2 versions of Star Trek, and like a lot of instances, I just like give my brothers the DVDs because it's like I don't want them. Here you go.
Oh my gosh, you love Star Trek? Are you talking about the 2009 version?
Yes.
I love it. You don't understand.
Like a lot.
Well, that movie for me, because up until then I was so anti-Trek because that was 2009 was like my first year of Comic-Con, so I was just like, I'm not gonna ever be a Trekkie. No. And then, because I remember then, I know this is off topic, but whatever, we're talking about it. So I was out at dinner, because I used to go to the movies with my grandma and her boyfriend a lot. And we went to dinner to California Pizza Kitchen. And it was one of my first 2 times there. And we were there for dinner. And then we were going to go from dinner. And then it's literally right, you literally walk across the street, and then the movie place is right there. Because it's in the shopping center, so it's not really like a busy street. It's just like a whatever. Anyway, so we go to dinner, and I was telling him, like, we were sitting at the bar, and that's where we were eating, and I was talking to the lady there, and she's like, oh, what movie are you guys going to see? I'm like, oh, Star Trek, and I was like rolling my eyes because I didn't really want to see it. And then I was like, I'm not gonna be a Trekkie. No, you're not gonna do that to me. I'm not gonna be classified as I'm already a nerd as it is. I'm not gonna be one. No. I come out of the movie, and I'm like, God damn it.
That movie was like, dude, I was already into, I had seen The Next Generation, and I was into The Next Generation. And I was never, like, exposed to the original series, even though I knew of it. And I saw that, and I was like, oh my gosh, change my life, kill me. I couldn't believe. I was like, oh my gosh, like, I can't. And so, like, honestly, like, I love that movie.
Me too. Yeah. And that's, like, for me, like, obviously there's some problems in terms of, like, how JJ, like, sexualizes the women in there, especially Uhura. But other than that, I think, like, for me, it got me into Star Trek. Like, I haven't seen very many original series episodes because I try watching it and it's just like it feels really dated. So I'm like, so I'll stick with the movies.
Maybe Next Generation will be more your speed.
It was no, it is. I've seen the majority of the Next Generation, and I love the Next Generation.
Yeah,
who's your favorite character?
What makes you not a Trekkie? This is confusing to me. How can you be not a Trekkie? Like, I'm just sitting here and stewing. It's fine. How can you be not a Trekkie and love the Next Generation? Like, what are you trying to say here?
Me?
I mean, what makes you not like
you? What's
the
definition of being a Trekkie is enjoying the Next Generation. Like that's
no, I do. I'm saying I love the Next Generation. I haven't got around to seeing the original series as much as I have the Next Generation.
Okay, I just think you can define oneself as a Trekkie having only seen like 4 episodes of Star Trek.
If you like an episode of Star Trek, you are a Trekkie. This is what I would assume.
I think yeah. I mean, like if you love it to that degree,
movies, you are a Trekkie. Like there's no escaping it. If you like one, you're in.
Well, no, that's the thing. Because that's the thing is I watched the 2009 movie and I'm like, oh my god, I loved that. So immediately that night when we got to my grandma's house, I put on TV and like some random episode of The Next Generation was on, and I watched it and I fell in love with the show. And I've seen just about every single episode of The Next Generation, and I love it to death. And the finale, oh my god, that finale was so good. Like I
haven't seen all the episodes yet, so I haven't seen the finale, so don't spoil it.
Okay, so I won't spoil it.
Me. I can't imagine growing up not having like the Next Generation playing in the background. Like I don't know what that experience is like.
Well, that's and the funny thing is that like immediately, like it was like the year following that movie, for my birthday, because I was still pretty into Star Trek at the time, because it was almost a year later, and my mom actually got me a Star Trek birthday cake, and it came with like this little like plastic version of the Enterprise, and I still have that Enterprise to this day, because it's one of those random cake toppers that was actually kind of good quality. Like it's almost like you could have bought it as like a toy, but it came with the cake, and I still have it to this day.
You'll never find it again, so don't get rid of it. Yep.
Yeah.
I know, I won't. Well, and the funny thing too is that because we were lighting the candles, and the candle was right next to the ship, so it kind of burnt it. But it's cool because it left this like no, but not like in a bad way. But like it left this like scar as if it was like battle damage, and I thought it was so cool.
It looks like everyone we've ever seen after a battle, right?
Yeah,
that's awesome.
So I'm like,
that 2009 version, I remember, like, that was during my phase when I was watching very few films, because I was just I was out of the loop and disenchanted and stuff, and I remember distinctly talking on the phone with my dad, and he's like, blah, 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 and then we saw the new Star Trek, and I was like, I don't know, I grew up watching this stuff with him, so Star Trek for him and me is a big thing, and he's like, no, it's cool, it's okay. They made it seem like it was almost like a different timeline. Everything that came before it still fits. And I was like, oh, really? Okay, now that's interesting. He's like, right? It was very cool. And I'm like, okay, that's cool. I can give this. So then it was like, honey, we have to go track down the Star Trek movie and see it, He's like,
yeah, I'm the kind of nerd I'm the kind of nerd who gets mad when you call the new films the reboot, because that's inaccurate.
It's not accurate. Thank you.
Not remotely accurate.
It's a parallel timeline. That's all it is.
Not a reboot.
Yeah, it's funny. Not. And that really looped me in. That was a really, I don't know, a really cool.
I think it was a respectful way of being like, here's.
Guys, this is a big deal.
And then they brought in old Spock, and I was so.
Dude, you spoiled it now.
Okay, the movie's also the movie's been out for almost a decade.
I thought everybody here has seen it.
There's no reason to reboot Star Trek, and the idea of rebooting Star Trek is so repugnant to me, because you have so much awesome, amazing history. It would be like, I think it would be like rebooting Star Wars. It would be disrespectful. And
it's so
they're not reboots. That's the thing. Yeah. They sold as a reboot, though. That's the problem. PR was the problem.
Yeah. Well, and as always, I sound like I shudder myself when I talk like this, because when we talk about Man of Steel and Batman v Superman, we're saying it's new and different, and that's okay. And so I don't, I understand people's idea of the sacredness of the things that they enjoyed as a child and stuff. But a lot of it was just like, you're rebooting that? Oh, I don't know if I'm going to like the new version. Like, everything before that had been an offshoot of something else. They never came back, redid.
That's the difference between Superman and Star Trek, though. I couldn't
handle any of that, but that was like, ooh, I don't know. But the way they made it work, I was like, oh, I'm totally in.
Yeah, so Superman has been rebooted every 5 years for 80 years now. It's very silly to be like, oh, there can't be a reboot. It'll undo all that history. Like, what history, you guys? It's over.
And especially, what is there to reboot? I mean, there was Superman with Christopher Reeve. There was Lois and Clark with Dean Cain. There was Tom Welling.
Yes.
Like, what is there to reboot? Come on.
Yeah. Yeah, totally different takes. Like, I'm watching Lois and Clark right now, and it's a totally different, I mean, like, it's a totally different flavor. I would say that even the point of view character is different, because it's like, I watched Smallville, and I think Smallville was you know, I mean, like, it was an ensemble show to a certain degree, but mostly you're isolated in Superman's perspective. Like, Clark's perspective is your perspective. And I think that's a really interesting way to go about it. But, like, it's really exciting to watch Lois and Clark and be like, Superman is just kind of like a guy that we know, and we are Lois Lane. That's crazy to me. Like, that was the coolest thing. I watched the first couple episodes, and I was so confused because I was like, well, when do we... You know, when's Clark showing up? What's Clark's arc? And, like, Lois and Clark was literally just like I could feel the narrative being like, honey, we don't care. We don't care what Clark's doing. We're not interested in what Superman has to say. This is about Lois. And I was like, holy crap. As soon as I, like, melted into that, like, it becomes a totally liberated story, and it's liberated of a lot of the baggage.
Watch this frickin' series. Is it
honestly, I resisted it for a really long time because I hated the couple episodes I saw in the 90s when I was watching it. I hated them so much. But it's a lot different than what I thought it was going to be. It's a lot different.
Is it on Netflix?
It's not. I've had to pirate it. I bought a few episodes that I couldn't find, but for the most part, I'm a thief. They can come for me if they want. I don't care. Okay. If the FBI is listening, come at me, bro.
The FBI is
okay, well, so now is your FBI agent listening to you specifically? Is that for real?
I mean, always. But my FBI agent is also enjoying the Lois and Clark episodes with me, so I don't know what to tell them.
Your FBI agent has gone soft on you a little bit like Hawkeye, and it's like, I don't know, she's pretty cool. I'm just gonna let this stuff slide. Now she's watching
Terry
that show.
Hatcher really did put her whole heart and soul into this role. You know, it's worth the time.
He's been in so many different things. That's really cool. Oh, and also, just as a side note, because I have Danielle here, I went and read the Lois Lane Fallout trilogy. What kind of awesomeness? I like that series very much, and I need more. So, all straight up from Lois's perspective, and she's smart, and it's a great story, and what a cool mystery, and oh look, there's Smallville guy that she talks to online.
Yes, like that's the thing that's so amazing is that it's like a story about Lois, from Lois's perspective, pre-Superman, but we still get like our romance squee. At regular intervals. Regular intervals, she's just like, oh yeah, I know you guys are all here for romance, so here's a little bit of flirting.
I'll give you a sprinkling smattering. Just enough.
Yes.
Why, and I'm like, okay, this is absolutely adorable. And I can't decide which one I like best. Like the fact that Clark
feelings that are age appropriate and that have it's just really good. It
really is. And I deeply love her when she's like, he doesn't like Macbeth, and Clark turns around at the guy and goes, there's no heroes in it. And I'm like,
so cute.
That's perfect. Anyway, so yeah.
I mean, I would say that I can definitely tell that Welling is her Superman, like by the way that she writes him.
Yeah, most likely.
Which is,
everybody's got there.
It's just that, like, when I read it, I'm always like, nope, that's baby. That's the tiny one. That's itty bitty Superman.
So my question is, are those books like sanctioned by DC or like?
Yes.
They are. Okay.
Yes, she was hired to do them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because
mostly
like,
when you.
Go ahead.
it's one of those YA offshoots that they've actually expanded upon by now, and I think that Gwenda Bond's books have actually opened the doors for that YA offshoot. I would say I would give her a lot of the credit. I think that the popularity of the Lois Lane books is a huge part of why we have a whole YA wing.
Yeah, because now there's like a
also
Batman
DC
YA
Superhero
one,
Girls.
There's a Wonder Woman, and then there's a Catwoman, right? Like I haven't read them, but I've seen these other ones running around. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, and the cool thing, and it's the other thing that DC Superhero Girls is kind of paving the way for too, because they've proved that investing in young women, which is like we have to, the YA genre is overwhelmingly read by young women.
Yeah.
It's proving that investing in young women is an investment that pays off for DC.
No,
that's huge and exciting.
At least we've proved it finally. My gosh.
Yeah, we finally proved it. So we finally earned our YA titles. Thank God.
Guys, regarding Batman v Superman Celebration, we didn't mention that even though that it was a fandom movement, a couple of people who worked on the movie actually joined the celebration. Larry Fong posted his coffee cup with Batman logo, and Clay Innes shared a photo of shooting the scene with Clark and Jonathan in the mountains.
That was a cool
shot.
I didn't know that was real. I thought that was all CG.
That was such a beautiful shot.
And also, speaking of Larry Fong, so some of you guys in the chat know this. Okay, so I was interacting with Larry Fong on Twitter the other day because let me find the actual post so I can say word for word what happened. Okay, okay, so he's made this post a couple of days ago, and he said, "Oh, this holiday always reminds me of the time I told my nephew it takes it's time to look for Easter eggs." And he said, "In which movie, Uncle?" Which I thought, which is also that's really funny. Like that, and that's what I said.
Awesome.
And that's what I said. I said that's gonna be my kid when they're older. And then when one of our listeners, Domain Stokely, he's always asking about when we're gonna do the podcast. So he asked, "When is the next podcast, bro?" And Larry Fong responded, "Soon." Now, I don't know what this means. I messaged Larry on Vero because we're acquaintances on there. So I still haven't gotten a response yet, and this could be just an honest mistake. Maybe he thought he was referring to something else, but I'm again trying not to get my hopes up for this, but there's an ever so slight possibility we might be able to get Larry Fong on the podcast. I can't promise anything because I don't know if he meant that seriously or what the situation is, but that happened. So keep an eye out on our Twitter, which we have made since the last episode. So if you guys definitely want to see more of our stuff, follow us on Twitter at DC Films Podcast.
Oh yeah, by the way, we're on Twitter now, guys.
Which some people know. So
if I make a Twitter, can I be anonymous? Like nobody knows that it's my Twitter.
Yeah, you don't have to say exactly who you are. Yeah, or yeah, and then we also I've been giving everyone here access to the page itself. So if you ever want to share your thoughts on things, you can have access to the page as well. I can send you the info.
Mm-hmm. But you need a Twitter account to do that, right?
Well, no. So I would give you the login information for our podcast
page.
So you can go on and write something and then sign Mod Rebecca at the end so that they know that it's you talking versus Danielle or me or Nick or anybody else. And,
okay, cool. Yeah, can you give me that information?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, definitely for sure. So again.
Yeah, Twitter is super anonymous. Otherwise, I wouldn't shoot my mouth off half as much as I do. Honestly, if I had to attach my full name for the record, I would not be talking as much shit. I am not all that brave, and also, job hunting. So.
But yes, also we'll kind of on the subject of people involved in the DCEU responding to me. So Samantha Jo commented something on Vero earlier, or she made some post about going to some comic and entertainment expo in Chicago this weekend, and I asked her, oh, hey, are you going to come down to San Diego Comic-Con? I'd like the chance to meet you. And she said to me, and there's proof of me, tagged my name, so this is real. Probably not this year, but I've been a few times in the past. I'll make sure to post if I do end up going, and perhaps we'll connect. So
awesome.
All of y'all are making connections. Artyom and Nick are in the big leagues now, and the rest of us are just normal people.
I'm just sitting here in my living room going, man, I suck. I have all these great things and all these great essays inside of me, and I never write them, and
Nick is gonna be like got his own like interview show on YouTube or something, and Artyom is gonna be in the gym working out with Zach and Mark's wife and stuff. Artyom, you're gonna be an extra in one of his movies. You're gonna be like one of the buff people who like does a stunt or something in the background.
They should have had you be the focus in the Russia parts of Justice League.
I'm gonna be in the sequel 300, which will be called 301.
Yeah.
I love it.
So I think on that note, I think that being said, I think that's probably going to be it from us. Also, I actually have to get.
Don't we have questions from Twitter?
Actually, we don't. So no one sent me.
I thought we had two.
I checked and no one sent us anything. Unless I'm wrong.
I haven't got.
I think I saw two people asking about the sequel.
Wait, did they message or did they tag us in something? Because I don't. Let me see.
I'm on the tag.
Okay, well maybe so maybe I do need to check the tag. Okay, let me see.
Ooh. Thank you.
Okay, good. It's a good thing we checked. Okay, so there are two questions. We'll answer them really quickly because I have to get ready in a few minutes. Okay. All
right.
Okay, this is from Melissa wants a JL Snyder cut at Mermaid Sailor. What would you like the films to do with Lois and Clark moving forward? Hashtag DC Films Podcast.
Babies.
Babies.
Actual marriage. Actual engagement. Okay. They said, what would we like to see?
I always thought that we would end up with some sort of like normalization. I always thought that we would end with something that sort of like, not like brought the status quo back, but sort of moved that relationship more to the center of a movie rather than having it sort of be like on the edges of Clark's experience and on the edges of Clark's relationship with Batman. I always thought that we would end up with a film that was more in the spirit of the Donner films in terms of the balance between the two characters. Probably, given time and distance from the Donner films, shifted more toward Lois's perspective. But I always figured we would end up with sort of like a status quo feeling, which like also would have been really kind of Zack to do, because it would give whoever picked up Lois and Clark after that a great jumping off point where they could definitely build whatever they wanted to build. Krypton's already taken Brainiac, so that's over.
Well, that's not necessarily. I mean,
we could use Brainiac everywhere. You could just
I would be
Brainiac
fine with Lex
full
Luthor
year.
I would be fine with Lex Luthor being the villain for the next 3 movies straight, and the haters can whine all they want, but I love him.
I do love him too.
Well,
so,
the thing is, a lot of
super,
here's my thing is I want. First of all, I want them to be engaged and have them address that directly.
Yes.
Possibly tease the fact that John could be coming down the line.
That would be cool.
But also, a lot of Superman's villains, I think, don't necessarily fit the DCEU and are a little too outlandish. I don't know if I really want Bizarro in this universe. I know Amy does. I know Amy wants 2 Henrys to work with.
I think Bizarro could be cool if they take it more seriously.
She's like double up Superman, triple up Superman, Superman orgy, Superman.
Oh my God.
I want hundreds of Henry Cavills working with me. Only Henry.
You know what would have made a great movie with Bizarro as a villain is that if we were watching half of the movie, and after half of the movie, it was revealed that all this time we were watching after Bizarro and not Superman. That would have been a mind-blowing twist.
This is one of my top suggestions for how to handle the mess that was Justice League.
There you go.
What if it's not Superman? I'm just saying, like, there's no reason it had to be. That would be my jumping off point, because where do you go after Justice League? It's over. Like,
just pretend it never happened.
We could also pretend it never happened. I'd be super fine with that as well.
So many others do that where they come on and it's like, man, I mean, The Last Jedi, whatever, it doesn't matter what happened before, let's just keep going. And so they can easily do that. They could totally easily do that.
As an option, Man of Steel 2 can be a direct sequel of Man of Steel, but before Batman v Superman, there are 18 months of time skip after Man of Steel.
Ooh. I love that suggestion.
I just want it for the romance, to be honest.
Yes!
Right?
Oh my god, develop that whole relationship.
Being together.
I just want the flirting and crap.
Yep. And you can
I want them to go on dates and
story that Lois is chasing, and have some fun there. Like, I mean, this could be all sorts of
Make Perry a really heavy part of this, where he's just constantly burdened by the fraternization of his two employees.
Yeah.
Just a constant running joke in the background of Perry just being like, "Stop! I fucking stop!"
I like that part of BvS where Clark is leaning against her desk and Lois is walking away and Perry just stands in the thing like, do some work.
No, actually, that's my perfect Man of Steel sequel. Thank you, Artum. That's it. That's right there. I want to go back in time, and I want an expansion of that tense moment at their desk.
Oh,
whatever we need to do to make that happen for 2 hours, I'm there. Right, that's exactly my aesthetic.
I just want the midpoint between movies. That would be perfect. We get to see them be together. We get to see the flirting. We get to see the relationship get established. We get to see them at work together. We get to see what happened to that obnoxious dude from Man of Steel.
Lombard.
I like Lombard. He stood his ground at the end.
I feel like Lombard is necessary to a certain degree. We can get rid of him anytime we want to, though.
What also would have been interesting is that, remember how on Wallace's wall in Batman v Superman there's a lot of newspapers about what Superman did, and it would have been cool to see that in action in Man of Steel 2.
Well, and see how he manages to balance that and being a reporter, which he's also really good at. The Ultimate version tells us,
it would also be a really good opportunity to sort of expand the slow build of how this kind of hysteria that gets whipped up around Superman sort of gets made, and sort of how prejudice is built, and thematically that would be really powerful. It would be really powerful.
Wow, you just blew my mind with that.
That's another thing that I really would have loved to see about that. Because
it's timely
of the fact,
too. It's an extremely timely thing.
Because
it really is.
People are we go from, oh my gosh, aliens, what's going on? The world is ending. To Superman is established, there are two sides. It's but how did those sides form? I want to know the interviews. What did Lois ask him in the first interview she ever did with him? How that whole thing developed, and I just I want to see that. And my personal opinion is that I don't think we should be moving backwards at this point in time in the universe, but I totally want to see all that stuff. So if they decide to do a novelization or something, whatever, I want to see all of that. If they decide to do a comic version of it, whatever they do, I want to know what that stuff is, that stuff can happen.
That would be cool. I would take a novelization.
I just think too, if we had that 18-month span, though, if we really detailed that out and we gave a lot of information, it might start to solve the problem that Justice League has created, which is that we have so many holes and we have so much disagreement about what should be the next direction. Is that let this film test the waters. Let Man of Steel 2 literally be Man of Steel 2. Let it just drop right back in time. Let us build what was supposed to be built there. and then, you know, see what the fandom does in reaction to that. If everyone rejects it wholeheartedly and that it doesn't make any money and, you know, it doesn't pay off, whatever, then, you know, go forward with this unholy Justice League agenda. But, you know, give the original. I mean, that's the thing, is I feel like they never gave this approach a chance, and going back in time might give them a chance to approach that. I don't know if I'd want anyone but Snyder to do it, but I think it would be a really interesting thing. It would also be mold breaking. It would be another statement that says we're not the MCU.
Yeah,
things
and we're
that
never
happen,
going to be.
things that happen in this universe are consequential and not necessarily sequential, which I think is interesting.
Okay, now I'm just like,
I don't know. It's a fascinating idea. I'm really into it.
I want this.
Okay. I would
every time.
Okay, I would love to. I would absolutely love to chat more, but like, I really got to get going to work. So on that note,
question was there? Are we done?
Well, there is another question, but like, I literally have no more time. Like, I gotta get going.
Okay, fair enough. Sorry.
All right, sorry. I know it's from Alex Shepard on Twitter. I promise we'll get to your question next time we record. Okay, I promise. That'll be the first thing we do is answer your question.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll do it first.
All right.
All right. So thanks everyone for joining me.
Thank you.
We'll do the normal intros next episode, or outros. You guys can find them all online at their respective names. They're tagged in the description of this video below. Thank you guys again. It was lovely talking to you guys, and I'll talk to you guys.
Just came at the end of something.
Oh, sorry, Al. We're just leaving. Okay, everyone listening, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Again, I really gotta go. So if you guys like this video, please share it. You guys can find us on iTunes. Like this video, share it, do all that stuff. Thank you guys so much again, and until next time, have a good one.